I think there we are. There we are. Okay. I think that should all be in order now. Let me do one final thing here so that I can actually keep an eye on things. I'm going to need my phone. There we are. Okay. Perfect. Cool. Sorry for that. All right. Welcome. Welcome back. I'm DTail74, and this is going to be The Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess 80%. I am very excited. I am also very tired. I just woke up. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and start the timer on 3. In 1, 2, 3. Okay. There we are. We're on our way. Right away, very conveniently, you can actually skip the opening cutscene in Twilight Princess, which is great. Unlike most Zelda games, you can just do that. No modifications or like saved files or anything required. Very nice. And unlike a lot of runs that I've done in the past where you sort of have to go over a bunch of formalities at the start of the run, Twilight Princess, we're going to get started very, very quickly. I'm going to carry this rock, we call this rock Dwayne. I'm going to carry it over to the Orden Gate that leads to the bridge, because we need the rock to clip through the gate. So I'm going to place it at a somewhat particular position and then line myself up such that if I side hop into the rock, it'll push me into the gate, from when I can then bonk into the gate by rolling to come back out of it on the other side. Now, unfortunately, which way you bounce when you roll into the gate is mostly random, and so sometimes it takes a little while for the gate to let you through. There's a little bit of finesse that you can do to like weigh the odds in your favor, but occasionally the gate can still just say no, so a little unfortunate there. Camera? Okay, well that worked somehow. With the upside down camera. Well, at least we're going. So now, I can grab onto the bridge here. Oh no. So what I'm supposed to do there is open the map on the same frame that I let go of the bridge. That way I have a little moment to buffer a button combo that will reset the game. I messed it up there, obviously, but we'll just go and try it again. Unfortunately, I do need to clip through the gate again, but so be it. The reason that we're doing all of this is so that we can reset the game on the same frame that Link falls into the void. And what that will do is it will cause a glitch called Back in Time. It's a very poorly named glitch, but so be it. What that's going to let us do is effectively just spawn Link in on the title screen, where, you know, you're not normally supposed to be able to, like, play the game normally. And by then saving and quitting out of the title screen, we can carry a bunch of story flags that are set on the title screen that aren't supposed to be set yet into our actual game file. And by doing that, we can skip a large chunk of the earlier parts of the game, which is going to be very helpful. There we go. All right. So now I will simply reset my game by holding the correct button combo. That spawns us in on the Elden Bridge, which is where the cutscene that the title screen plays starts. I'm then going to jump off the bridge to reload the bridge in a normal non-title screen state, from whence I can then save quit to get those story flags that I was talking about. There we go. That took a little bit longer than it's supposed to. The gate was not very nice, and I was a little bit stupid, but that's how it goes. Okay, moving along. Having done Back in Time, we spawn in here in Farron Woods. The reason for that is, again, just because certain story flags have been set now. The game assumes that we've already made it through just about half of the initial, like, Orden tutorial sequence. On top of that, we also already have the hero's clothes and the Orden sword, as well as the Hylian shield, none of which are supposed to be accessible yet. So that's pretty nice, because we are going to have to fight a couple of monsters on our way through here, and the Orden sword in particular is going to make that way faster. If you're familiar with the game, you'll know that at this point we are chasing this kid, Tallow, who ran off into the woods chasing a monkey, because we're worried about him, and we're going to end up finding him and the monkey captured by some bokoblins, and we need to save them. It's really just a little tutorial sequence that's supposed to sort of teach you how to fight and sort of familiarize you with the, map of Faron Woods. But obviously I know exactly where I'm going and what to do, so it's sort of a little uninteresting, but it gives me a good opportunity to talk about movement. Movement in Twilight Princess is actually very interesting, basically all of the time, and I am constantly going to be trying to do frame-perfect inputs every half second or so for this entire game. Because the fastest way to move as human Link is rolling, and the fastest way to roll is to perfectly chain together your rolls with 0 frames in between. Interestingly, there's actually a great way to check whether you did it right, which is the items in the top right part of the HUD. You can't use your items while rolling, meaning that when you roll, the items get grayed out, because you're not allowed to use them. And so if in between 2 rolls you can see them flash back to their normal brighter colors where you can use them, you'll know that there was a frame there where you weren't rolling. And if you don't see any kind of a flash, then that means you chained your rolls together frame perfectly, which is fast. So I can kind of keep a constant eye on it and get a little bit of immediate feedback on, whether I'm rolling like too quickly or too slowly or whatever, and sort of try to narrow down how to chain my rolls together, which is very helpful. And clearly I'm not doing a great job of it so far. You can see Link occasionally just outright walking, but it's difficult. Twilight Princess is full of frame-perfect tricks. Most of them aren't super relevant. There's going to be 2, 3 throughout this run, one of which we've already done, that are like actually a big deal. The initial Back in Time, a later instance of Back in Time, and Gorge Void, which I'll cover later. But you are constantly doing frame-perfect inputs that are a little less important anyway. Like, for example, the rolling, but also what we call a one-framer, where usually between pairs of cutscenes or between pairs of text boxes or pairs of cutscenes and text boxes for that matter, there's usually exactly 1 frame where you can actually do inputs. And so in some cases, if you do, say, a jump attack in those frames, you can basically get a little bit of movement in for free where you wouldn't normally be able to. So that sort of thing is going to come up a lot as well. And so there's going to be a lot of frame-perfect inputs in this, despite the fact that most of the tricks we're going to do aren't actually that tight. Anyway, moving on through the Orden tutorial sequences, we're starting the Goats minigame now. This is Goats 2, strictly speaking. Oh no, I've made a mess of it already. You have to herd goats twice normally during the Orden sequence, but because of the Back in Time glitch we did earlier, we managed to skip the first one. So we only actually have to do Goats 2, where you have to herd 20 goats as opposed to the 10 in Goats 1. This minigame can be a little bit tough. There's a lot of RNG in it. The places the goats spawn is actually perfectly consistent, but the way that they react, as well as the intensity with which they react to Link's movement and his whooping, is actually randomly determined when you load in. So there's a sort of basic pattern that we try to follow every time we do that, but depending on how the goats react exactly, it's going to get messy and you do have to improvise. That was not very good. A low 30 is, even by my standards, just not super good, but it's not crazy bad either. The best runners in the world will usually get like high 10s, anywhere between 15 and 19. And I'm usually aiming for like mid 20s, sort of what I want to get if I can. For reference, I am mostly a beginner at this game. I've been running it for quite a while, but very slowly, doing very few runs every once in a while. So I'm not super experienced yet. There's a lot of those sorts of little things, like the Goats minigame or what have you, that are just sort of difficult that I haven't bothered to like grind out. But on the whole, I know what I'm doing pretty well. Anyway, right here, we're just talking to Bo repeatedly. This is actually sort of screwed up. Normally, the way that this text box, or these text boxes would spawn is as part of a cutscene, where they would all just come back to back without needing to do anything. But because of Back in Time, we have to talk to Bo repeatedly because the text is part of a normal text box instead of a cutscene. because the story flags have been sort of messed up and moved around in a way that they're not supposed to. Anyway, the reason we're talking to Bo is so that we can wrestle him to get the iron boots. And again, this has to do with back in time. Normally, he would only become available for wrestling maybe an hour, hour and a half in when you're trying to get into Goron Mines. But because of back in time, the story flag that says we've tamed Epona has already been set, and that's the relevant flag for this. And so Bo is actually willing to wrestle us right now, which is great because sort of on a normal casual playthrough, it would be a big detour to have to come all the way back to Orden just to wrestle Bo for the boots. But now we can just sort of do it before we even leave here, which is obviously very convenient. Unfortunately, the wrestling minigame here with Bo is just fully random. This is basically rock, paper, scissors. It's slightly weighted rock, paper, scissors. And he was distinctly unkind just there, so it took absolutely forever. Worst part is we have to do it again. The two cycles of Bo have two different weights to them for the rock, paper, scissors game, which makes it so that in the first phase, it's actually optimal to try to slap him, while in the second phase, you have the best chance of winning by trying to grab him, or rather, by dodging, which is the same button. But again, it is fully just RNG. There's really not a whole lot you can do here. If you're very good at mashing, you can actually defeat Bo in one cycle, if and only if you get a successful slap immediately, which again, in cycle 2, isn't actually the optimal option. So most people don't go for that, usually. I certainly don't. Anyway, all that gets us the iron boots, finally. That was a mess of a Bo fight, but sometimes that's how it goes. And yeah, with the iron boots, we can now move on. We're going to need those quite a lot later. So, sorry, just checking my messages there. That's wrong. I need to equip both. I also need to, wait. I don't know if I am going to have the right address now. I'm just going to go back inside just to make absolutely sure that I don't accidentally save in Orden Village. I don't know when the save point changes. So I need to make a save here at Bo's house. Because that's going to carry some data that we're going to need for the second instance of Back in Time later, when we're going to really mess with the game significantly. It's going to be absolutely hilarious. But yeah, I sort of messed it up there. I'm a little bit tense, in case you couldn't tell, and so I'm definitely not paying as much attention to the game as maybe I should. This was a bit of a mess to set up. Anyway, Colin's going to want to talk to us here, and then we can go talk to Ilya together. Yay, story stuff, angry girlfriend, hurt horse, yada yada. We get turned into a wolf. That's really what matters to us as speedrunners. Twilight Princess is very convenient in that you can kind of just skip most story cutscenes. Not all, but many, which is very nice. You don't have to spend, you know, minutes at a time waiting on cutscenes usually, with a few exceptions. Which is especially great because this game is already quite long, just as is. It's not super broken as far as Zelda games go. And a lot of the, like, just text boxes and things just take a long time to happen. And the shorter cutscenes are just all, like, a little bit on the long side, you know? Alright, hang on. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.5. Yes! Nice. So that's box break. That trick saves a few frames at most. It's really not very relevant at all. But it's possible to break the box while you're actually still chained to the floor, which you're not supposed to do, but with the correct angle and timing, you actually can. And then you don't have to break it afterwards, which is a tiny bit faster. So that's nice. Anyway, now that we've turned into a wolf, you know, we've met Midna and all this stuff, our moveset has drastically changed. But press A still goes fast, which is great. For Wolflink, the movement is a little more nuanced, though. So the way that Wolflink's dashes work is, you know, they just make you move faster once you press the button for X amount of time. And once you dash, you're not allowed to dash again for this other amount of time. So what I'm going to be doing a lot is something called dash canceling, where, as it turns out, if your dash gets interrupted by something, say by an attack, by an enemy hitting you, by jumping off of a ledge, that kind of a thing, then if it gets interrupted by something in the first 10 frames of the dash, so the first third of a second, you'll actually be allowed to dash again immediately as opposed to having to wait out the normal timer. And so by doing that, you can get these sorts of tiny little dashes in certain places without needing to wait. Like right here, I'm going to dash and then immediately B attack, and then when I hit the ground, I can immediately dash again, which is very helpful. Right there, I just did a quick jump attack into the cutscene, then immediately skipped the cutscene so that I could get as much movement as possible before actually having my movement taken away from me. We're going to be doing that sort of thing very often. Right here, I'm going to try to hit this rock such that it will fall, but I won't land in the water. Let's see if I made it correctly, because, yeah, nice. One of these particular rocks needs to fall. If you fall in the water there's a little bit of Midna text that says, like, hey, you idiot, why'd you fall? But if you manage to line that up perfectly, you can actually get the rock to break such that you'll be allowed to Midna jump over without getting that Midna text, which is naturally fast. So that's pretty cool. These are just Midna jumps. Some of these Midna jumps will actually have one-framers on them that I was talking about before, where if there's text before it, like right here, there's one frame in between the text and the cutscene of Midna flying to the first Midna jump point, where I can actually already start the jumps. And right here, we're going to do a similar thing. Oh, I missed it. Right there, after skipping that cutscene, there's also one frame where I can do a jump attack to just get down quickly, and then we can skip that Midna text that's up there. All of that sort of thing is going to come up very frequently. Here in the sewers/rooftop sequence, it's incredibly common. It's going to be a little less common from here. But those sorts of one-framers are going to come up a lot. And in fact, one of the actually important frame-perfect tricks later on in the run... Dang it. So I got the one-framer there, but unfortunately I was just mashing for text rather than actually trying to do a midden jump, meaning that I was pressing B during the one frame, and that meant that I did a B attack off the ledge and fell and died. Not perfect, but at least a demonstration. Anyway, the trick Gorge Void that's going to come later is actually just a regular old one-framer. It's just that its particular context makes it incredibly important and makes it save about a minute and a half. I'm going to quickly break these boxes for some health. Use that. There we go. Okay, well, we've finally made it to Zelda. 16.5 minute mark. Not too fast, but not too slow. For a marathon, certainly not embarrassing. I will take it. This brings us to one of the most important and easily the hardest trick that I'm going to do this entire time. This is going to be sword and shield skip. The reason we have to do anything here is, at this point in the story, you're supposed to get the sword and the shield. I already have the sword and the shield because of back in time. That means that they're not going to spawn in their usual locations, and I can't collect them from there. But if I don't collect them from there, Midna is going to believe that I don't have them and won't let me into Fair and Twilight. So normally that would be a soft lock. But luckily, there's a convenient enemy right here, this Bulblin. His name is Yugo, and his birthday is the same as mine. We're going to lure Yugo all across this bridge over to where the Fair and Twilight is, and then we're going to set up a very tight little jump using him, where we're going to jump attack him repeatedly in order to gain so much height that we can sail clear over the Midna text trigger that would normally prevent you from entering Fair and Twilight, and straight into the cutscene trigger that makes you enter Fair and Twilight. This is going to take quite a while to set up, and potentially take multiple attempts, because this trick is extraordinarily difficult. Yep. So right there, I think I needed to get slightly more of an angle with him. I needed Yugo to be a little bit further to the right, because the way that the cutscenes line up isn't just like a straight block. They're sort of curved, and so you actually want to get kind of a rightward angle with, from the wall in order to maximize your distance compared to the cutscene triggers. So right there, if Yugo had been a little bit further right and I'd been able to make a sharper angle with him, I might have been able to actually get in there, but as it stands, it wasn't good enough. It's okay. We do just get to retry this forever, luckily. Setting it up again does take a good bit of time every time, but it's not like you get a limited number of tries, so it's mostly okay. We might be here a little bit, but that's alright. This is easily the hardest trick in the run. This is also indicative of sort of the way that a lot of tricks are going to work in this run, where we're going to use something that Link can target to get a bunch of extra height and speed. There's a variety of ways to do that, and in Yugo's case, it's just the fact that when you hit him, he flies off into the air. And when he's in the air, you just, you have to jump further and higher to reach him again, so you get more height and more speed on your next jump attack. And that's all there is to it, but there's more ways to do it, some of which are glitchy, which we're going to see later. Ooh, okay, so there, I think if I just jumped a little bit later, it might have worked. So that's many of the ways in which you can fail this trick are sort of just tiny little combinations of things. There's a wide variety of ways to do this. Excuse me, give me the heart, please, thank you. But you need to get, the combination of the correct angle with the correct timing and the correct placement of Link himself. And there's many different combinations that might work, but they're all very particular. And so part of the fun of this trick, when you're like grinding it out, when you're learning it, is sort of figuring out how to tell which part you did wrong. And so right there, I'm fairly confident that the angle was fine and the positioning was fine, but I think I needed to jump a little bit later such that Yugo would have been a little closer to the ground again and I would have gotten a little more horizontal distance rather than just vertical. But yeah, there's a lot of different little variables to mess around with in this trick, basically. I'm going to try to just set one up very, very carefully here and just take my time. Come closer a bit, there you go. That's not gonna work. Come closer a bit. I really can't overstate how difficult this trick is. So right there, Yugo was a little bit too far back, and so when I attacked him the first time, Link had to go so far that he hit the midden attack's trigger just on the first jump attack, and we get turned around for that. Now the reason that I keep jumping in the void like this, by the way, is just because Yugo doesn't have a lot of health, and if I were to hit him a second time, he would just die, and then he wouldn't respawn. So instead, I have to fall into a void to reload the area while he's still alive, which will actually heal him back up to full and put him back where he's supposed to spawn. It's also the fastest way for me to get back to where he spawns conveniently, so just jumping off the bridge there makes a lot of sense to reset this trick. Once again, I'm going to try to just set this one up very carefully. I'm going to quiet down this time. Try and give myself maximum focus. Oh boy. Oh, you go. Come on. Go a little closer. Okay. Good. Whoa, that is so sharp. I think that's a little much. Let's reset that. In case you're wondering why I've got senses on, by the way, it's because it helps me with identifying the visual cue that we need for this. It's that little black line over there. That's the thing that we base our positioning on, both our own and Yugo. Dang it. Right there, I think I might be able to get it if I slide after I hit the ground, but not without doing that. Oh, this trick is so difficult. Apologies, by the way, for getting stuck on this for so long. This is kind of the, like, downside, I guess, for lack of a better word, of running Twilight Princess at a marathon, is this trick specifically. Basically nothing else in the run comes anywhere close to being as difficult as this is. And so a lot of the time when you're doing PB attempts, you know, since this is so early on in the run isn't very long. Or, sorry, the run is very long. And so this being, you know, 15 to 20 minutes in is not a big deal. Normally when you're doing PB attempts of this, you would just reset to this over and over. It's just kind of not that big of a deal. Oh, how you go. I thought he de-aggroed. But at a marathon, obviously, you know, that just means that sometimes you'll get stuck on this a little bit. And once again, I'm still fairly new at this game, and not very good at this trick in particular, so... Yes! There we go. Okay. I didn't really take a whole lot of time there, but I saw an opportunity and I took it. And I was right. So there we are. Okay. Excellent. Again, I cannot overstate how difficult that is. I think I must have spent maybe 8 or 10 hours trying to learn that trick before getting it once when I first picked it up. Obviously, I've gotten much better at it since then, clearly. I have a tendency when I'm actually doing PB attempts to get it usually 1 and 2 times. So I get to keep 1 and 2 of my runs, basically. Give or take. But, like, obviously it can get worse than that when you're, like, nervous, or you're trying to talk about it, and you're distracting yourself, or that sort of thing, right? It gets harder. So I wasn't expecting to get it that quickly. But all that to say, you know, I've made a lot of progress on that trick, and I am very proud of it, but it is still very difficult. Anytime that you see somebody just, like, casually shake out a sword and shield skip, you know, the really high-level runners, I would like to remind you how much time they've spent just on that trick, because it is just insane. Anyway, like I said, that's easily the hardest thing that we're going to have to do for the entire rest of the run. No exceptions. There are things that, like, some people specifically, like, struggle with, maybe more than sword and shield skip, depending on, you know, personal preference and skills. But as a rule, sort of as a whole, it's more or less indisputably the hardest thing in the run, at least that I'm going to be doing. There are strats that really high-level runners will do that I don't, that are harder than this, right? But sort of as far as when you're new to the run and you've just sort of learned the basics of things that you absolutely have to do, that's easily the hardest, by a country mile. Right there, I did actually hit a one-framer. After that Midna text, I managed to immediately start the Midna jump sequence, where normally you'd have to wait a small second for her to fly over to the first Midna jump spot. We didn't have to wait. Very nice. Anyway, doing sword and shield skip just now, like I was explaining before we started it, really only achieves just getting us into Fair and Twilight, which is where we're supposed to go right now. It's just that we locked ourselves out of doing it the normal way by performing back in time earlier. So, a little unfortunate. But that trick doesn't actually, like, achieve anything else. But now, we are going to do probably the most important trick in the run in terms of routing. This is going to be early Master Sword, and it's going to involve our buddy Jamal here. Going to line us up such that Jamal will stand in the correct spot, and then just wait for him to give me a good attack. Okay, messed it up unfortunately. That's fine. Let me just get a heart real quick, and then kill exactly 1 out of not Jamal and not Jamal. If I kill both, all of the Shadow Beasts will die, and we can't do the trick anymore. But if I just kill 1, they'll resurrect each other, including Jamal, and then we can try again. So let me try this once more. Jamal, do you mind? So close. I think you see the idea. So what I'm trying to do is line it up such that if I min the charge Jamal, I'm going to jump up high and make it up to that ledge out of bounds, where I can then navigate around, dang it, to get to the Sacred Grove. This is not nearly as difficult as it looks. I usually get this first or second try, with very few exceptions. I have been slightly messing up my setup for it though, but there we are. Okay, perfect. That was a little bit sketch, but we made it up. And right now, you know, you have to navigate through this kind of hard to see out of bounds area between the trees. But obviously I know where to go. I'm just gonna break this grass for a heart. And now we've made it to the Sacred Grove. So you're supposed to come here after defeating the 3rd dungeon of the game. So we are here, you know, a little teensy-weensy bit out of order. We've just exited the starting town. This is hours ahead of when you're supposed to get here. And it's going to get much worse from here because getting the Master Sword isn't just like a damage upgrade or anything like it is in most games. You don't just need it to kill Ganondorf, it's not just convenient. The Master Sword in this game is what allows you to freely transform between human and wolf forms. And that is an ability we are not supposed to have yet that will just break everything wide open. This sequence break is easily the most important one we're going to perform. For right now, though, we do just sort of have to play the Sacred Grove more or less normally. We get chased by a bunch of puppets and things, and we have to find and attack Skull Kid several times before we get this last little mini-boss fight in the arena. It's not a particularly riveting sequence, but it's got a cool couple of bits of movement, like right here, if I get it right, not quite. You can actually jump straight from the tree onto dry land without having to land in the water and climb back up. There's a lot of that kind of like little thing of just like slightly fast optimizations. Those are the kinds of things that I'm definitely not very good at yet, being somewhat new. But it's a fun sequence to do, trying to sort of eke out all the little bits and pieces everywhere. It's very fun. I'm also trying not to ever kill any puppets, because killing a puppet causes significant lag. And so if I just sort of leave them all alive, you know, I don't have to deal with that. Let's see, okay, we're definitely still up. I always look at Skull Kid's head and where he looks to check whether or not I've fallen down. Falling down there is preferable, because, you know, we don't have to then fall after the cutscene if we can fall during the cutscene. But it's kind of difficult to actually set it up, so I always check Skull Kid's face to see whether I made it or not. Okay. Right here, we do actually have to kill at least one puppet in order to get Skull Kid to spawn more puppets, which is when he becomes vulnerable. The optimal thing to do here is actually to kill exactly 2 puppets, because Skull Kid's timer to start spawning new puppets only starts running once a puppet has exploded. And the amount of time that it takes for a puppet to explode is random. It can be one of several different variants. And if you were to kill a lot of puppets all at once, you would get a lot of lag frames, and so that wouldn't really be worth it. But killing exactly 2 puppets hits the correct balance between how much lag you get for it and how high the odds are that you're going to get at least one fast explosion, which would make Skull Kid summon the next round of puppets sooner. We used to kill exactly 1 puppet just simply to minimize lag, but as it turns out, killing exactly 2 gives you so much more, so much of a better chance to get a good death animation that it's actually worth it in most cases. If you want to just sort of gamble, you'd still only kill 1, of course, but it's far more consistent to kill exactly 2. Right here, the Master Sword puzzle, I'm sure we all struggled with this one the first time we played it. I know I did, but luckily I know the solution. You can actually do this solution in the opposite direction as well, mirroring it completely. But if you do that, it would be 1 frame slower. For some reason. Anyway, you'll have noted I'm turning on senses in between jumps there. There's no point to that, it's just funny. In between every jump, there's exactly 2 frames where you can turn the senses on, and they'll immediately be turned back off because you enter a cutscene, but, you know, you can do it, which is neat. Taking a little second there to rest my voice, drink some water. Recommend you all do the same. Stay hydrated. Alright. But yeah, now we have the Master Sword. So that's going to do two things for us right now. It gives us the ability to warp whenever we want, as well as the ability to transform into wolf and back whenever we want. And these two things are going to just speed everything up so much. This is sort of where the game properly starts. Everything up until Master Sword is kind of like, you just do it, it's sort of whatever, you know, you try to go fast, but like this is where things get interesting. This is where the route gets interesting, and things start happening. The game's going to accelerate, as it were, from here. The first thing we're going to do is warp back to South Farron, which is actually the only portal we have right now. We did fight the Shadow Beasts in North Farron as well, but that was where we did early Master Sword, and you'll recall, in order to do early Master Sword, we needed the Shadow Beasts alive, which means the portal there hasn't actually spawned because the Shadow Beasts are still alive. So we can't warp back there. Which is kind of unfortunate, because that's exactly where we want to go, but we're just gonna have to warp to South Farron and walk back to the north, unfortunately. That's just the only option we have. So I'm going to quickly call Midna once this cutscene ends, and Wappen to Firombat S. Now, in case you're wondering, we're playing on German because it's faster. Whoa, crazy. But it's kind of interesting the way that faster languages work in Twilight Princess. It's not just a matter of which languages are more compact, although, you know, there is that aspect of it, as there always is. But it's actually, for some reason, Twilight Princess has two different text speeds, fast text and slow text, and depending on which language you're playing in, which text boxes get fast text and which get slow text is different, more or less at random. And so depending on what category you're playing exactly, and what text boxes that category needs to see over the course of the run, different languages might have a differing amount of fast text. And so different categories for this game are ran in drastically different languages, because depending on the category, certain languages are going to have more fast text than others, and that will be different per language, per category. So for any percent, there's broadly two options. There's German, which is what we're on, and there's also French, which is faster if you do a different route of any percent, which I'm not 100% sure we have fully figured out yet. This is a fairly recent development, but I think people have already been doing it, pretty sure. Last year, half a year, maybe. So, in any event, broadly German and French. But depending on the category, you might do something completely different. For example, Hundo is actually run in English, as is all dungeons, but glitchless any percent, as well as most other glitchless categories, are run on Korean. And so it sort of depends on what you're doing exactly. Anyway, now that we've made our way back to North Farron, we can actually kill the Shadow Beasts here and move on. And I'm seeing one note. I'm not sure if I should be looking at chat. I might distract myself. You know, there's a reason you don't usually do that at marathons. But one quick note, this sounds like hell to figure out. Yeah. Massive shoutouts to Definitely Not FX, who has a spreadsheet the size of Texas and owns 7 different copies of Twilight Princess for figuring this out. Anyway, right here, we're going to do our second instance of Back in Time. This is Forest Back in Time, or Forest Bit, where we're in the Forest Temple, and I'm going to do Back in Time. Crazy inventive name, as always. I'm going to line us up with the wall here, and then try and hit a very particular frame to pull the item wheel, to buffer another game reset, the same way we did at the start of the run, so that we can void out and reload the game on the exact same frame. Same as before. There we go. This is the correct frame. So now I'll hold the combo, and the game will reset exactly when we void out. There we go. This time I'm doing things a little bit differently. And I'm going to load the file that we saved at Bow, which is going to wrong warp us into the King Bulblin 1 fight, from whence I will then quickly exit again by resetting the game once more before skipping the cutscene as the game fades out. There's a lot that goes into why that works and how that works. Some of it I don't understand, most of it I do, but none of it do I have time to explain. So we're just going to move on. If you're familiar with Skyward Sword's back in time glitches, this is a little bit similar to that. Anyway, what that did is it set a flag in memory that we are now carrying with us, even just from inside back in time, called early boss fights. And that flag controls, for most bosses, whether the opening cutscene to that boss has been skipped. That fact is not going to come up for quite some time, though it will later, but for right now, what that flag controls in the Forest Temple is actually a little bit different. It controls the number of monkeys we've saved. And so right now, the game believes that we have saved 4 monkeys. I was about to say 7. 4 monkeys. When we have actually only saved 1, Rose here. And so when I enter a room where this information becomes relevant in just a second here, all of a sudden 3 extra monkeys are going to show up for no reason. This glitch is incredibly useful because it means that we don't need to save these first couple monkeys from the first half of the Forest Temple. There's the monkeys, by the way. And we can just sort of move on to the Ook mini-boss immediately. Interestingly, the Ook mini-boss, presumably because of the fact that this flag does something else in this part of the game, will still have its opening cutscene, despite the fact that, you know, in most cases, early boss fights would make it such that that cutscene has already been skipped. But, you know, funny quirks, I guess. Interestingly as well, if I fall into that void where we use the monkey chain to swing over, early boss fights would have actually been cleared. We would have lost that flag and I would have had to do the trick again. So don't fall there. Anyway, here's Ook. We have the Master Sword, so he is going to live for approximately 4 seconds, though he can stretch that life a little bit by just hopping around a whole bunch, which is unfortunately fully RNG. Anyway, Link, please. Thank you. He's dead now. It wouldn't normally be possible to ever one-cycle Ook on a normal casual playthrough. The Orden Sword simply cannot put out that kind of damage. But the Master Sword certainly can very easily. It does twice as much damage as the Orden Sword does, so it is not at all a problem. And we don't need to deal with the second phase of Ook, which is nice because the second phase kind of stinks, but it's a shame because the music for the later parts of the Ook fight is actually really banging. Alas. The reason we went out here in the first place is to collect the boomerang, obviously. You would normally need this to finish the Forest Temple, but spoiler, we are not going to be doing that. We do still, however, need the boomerang. This is just a required item for completing the game, but it is also one of the most useful items in the entire game. And in fact, the only way to skip the boomerang that we have any kind of access to is with the boomerang, so that's what we're going to do. That's actually not quite true. I'm lying a little bit. There are other ways involving other variants of back in time, sort of similar to what we did at the start of the Forest Temple, but we're not going to be doing that because that's on a different route, and I am doing a route that doesn't have to do that trick. So we are going to get the boomerang right now. We're then going to warp back to Fioronwald S once again. We're going to be doing that a lot. That portal is very important. Now that we have the boomerang, I am going to simply leave the forest behind, and we are not really ever going to come back here. Asterisk. There's going to be one small trip back here that we're forced to make later, but we're not actually ever going to do anything here again. In fact, we're never going to clear the Twilight in the Farron province. There's just no reason to do that for any percent. Right here, I'm going to have Midna tell me off, but from a very particular position, such that I can then maneuver Link onto a visual cue, from whence I can then use the boomerang to perform a glitch called a long jump attack, specifically a boomerang long jump attack, since I'm doing it off of the boomerang. What it basically boils down to is that Link will get extra height and speed on any jump attacks performed on something you're targeting that's either over a surface higher than Link's feet or over a void. The reason for this is just simply that the game wants you to be able to jump attack enemies easily, even if there's slight elevation differences between you, or say if a flying enemy is over a gap. But we can abuse this a little bit because we can put the boomerang wherever we want. And so by putting the boomerang out of bounds over a void, or in this case just over a higher piece of ground, or whatever, any kind of thing like that, we can basically sort of jump on command in a game where you're not supposed to be able to do that. Needless to say, that is a very useful glitch. We are going to be abusing it constantly. It is going to be the main movement tech for the entire rest of the run, basically. And it is going to come up a lot, including potentially very shortly, but that depends on whether or not I hit another very difficult trick beforehand. Right now we're heading into the Zelda Twilight, same way that you would on a casual file, but we're not actually going to clear it just yet. We have a lot of other things to do first. That's a better order of operations. To start, I'm going to have to try to hit a trick called Gorge Void. I was talking about this a little bit before, where it's effectively just a one-framer, where there's going to be one frame between a pair of cutscenes where I can actually do inputs. And if I hit a jump attack on exactly that one frame, what's going to happen is Link will fall into the gorge and void out, hence the name Gorge Void. If I hit that, we will save about 1:20. Let's find out. Oh, well, that's fine, actually. Guys, please. There we go. Wait. Oh, no. Okay, well, I didn't hit it anyway, but I think if I had hit it, I would have just game overed and we would have not been able to do anything with it. Because the thing is, I'm at 1 heart right now. Falling in the void would have killed me. That's very unfortunate. Anyway, what happens here is there's no bridge. Midna tells you, we need to go look for a bridge. Let's go back to the forest. Because there's a bridge there. I don't know how she knows this. You have to go back, you have to warp the bridge over to the gorge, and then you can continue into Zelda Twilight. We get forcibly warped to Farron here. If we hit Gorge Void, we wouldn't have gotten the Midna prompt that forces us back to Farron, and instead, we would have been able to just sort of continue doing our stuff around Eldon right now, which would have been a much better order of operations. Additionally, there isn't actually a bridge. Because of the other glitches we've been doing, that thing is just never going to spawn, and so we're going to have to find a different way across the gorge. That'll come later. For right now, since we had to go back to the forest by force, I have to do forest escape again using the boomerang. And because I hit because I missed Gorge Void, we're going to have to do it again, a little bit later still. If you do hit Gorge Void and you don't get forcibly warped to Farron right now, you only have to do forest escape a total of 2 times, but if you miss it, you have to do it 3 times, and you lose about 1:20. Gorge Void is a very silly trick. You just press A on this one frame and save over 1 minute. It's hilarious, but it's also kind of sad. Anyway, given that we missed Gorge Void, rather than cleaning up around Eldon, I'm instead going to go to Lanayru. And you might think that that's not possible because there's a gate in our way. Look at that thing. How are you ever going to pass by it? And it's fearsome guards. Well, first of all, the fearsome guards are no trouble, really. But neither is the gate. There we go. Gates in this game are really just suggestions. The reason that this is so easy is because the game really doesn't expect you to be able to be Wolf there at all. You're just not supposed to be able to do that. And so we can just clip straight through that gate without any trouble. Oh no, So this cutscene's interesting. If you skip the cutscene while Link is still sniffing the ground, you get to skip the whole thing. If you don't skip it, you can't skip any of it afterwards. It's very silly, but yep, that's how it is. Now we just have to wait. There we go, okay. Anyway, you can see the skybox is a little screwed up. We weren't supposed to enter here through where we did or when we did. And so the skybox just becomes green rather than looking the way it's supposed to. I'm not supposed to equip boots there. Anyway, we're going from important sequence break to important sequence break, because while I failed Gorge Void, we then immediately clipped through the Lanayru Gate, and now I have to do Pillar Clip. This is one of the harder tricks in the run as well. This might take a few attempts. Pillar Clip is what it sounds like. I'm going to clip using a pillar. Specifically, that pillar down there that we're now sinking towards. I'm going to use that pillar to push myself through the wall next to it. We're going to do that in order to get into Lakebed Temple. A little bit sketchy and a weird camera angle. I'm not sure if this works. I don't think it does. But right now the pillar, yeah. So the pillar was pushing us there. You could see Link sort of subtly moving while in the Midna prompt. The reason we call Midna there is just because we have limited air. And while we're talking to Midna, you know, the air doesn't get used, but we can still get pushed by objects. So we can sort of stall and wait and move just a little bit without needing to spend any of our air. Let me try that again. This trick is very difficult. But yeah, we need to get into Lakebed Temple right now because we want to get the claw shot from it, because we'll need that thing. And we also want to be able to go back to Lakebed later, because that's one dungeon we actually do have to beat. But we want to avoid having to get the Zora armor, because that would be very, very slow. And right now, the lake is still half empty, because we haven't started the Lanayru Twilight sequence yet. And once the lake gets filled again, we can no longer do Pillar Clip, because you have to sink too deep to the point where you won't have the air to do this. So right now is really our only chance to get into Lakebed Temple without the Zora armor. Looks like we're back in jail again? Nope, we even just popped out fully. So this trick's a little bit difficult because it's all about positioning and angles. You need Link to line up such that the pillar will push you through the wall. And there's a particular place where that can happen. But you also need the correct angle, because if Link's angle is like too far left, or I mean I guess too far right as well, but mostly if it's too far left, the pillar won't be able to push you through the wall and will instead push you along the wall, which is obviously not really going to do anything. So you need to get this very particular placement. And I think what I've been doing wrong is I've been calling Midna too early. I'm going to try to fix that. That's sort of my usual mistake on this trick. But yeah, again, same as with Yugo, while it takes quite some time to get back to the trick again, you do get infinite retries at this, so that much is nice about it. Nice, there we go. Now we just use the iron boots to mimic the Zora armor swimming. What? Oh no. My angle must have been too sharp. So, once you clip through the wall, you still do actually need to make it to the loading zone for Lakebed Temple. And I think what happened there was I was going a little too far right, so I wasn't making an optimal line towards that loading zone, and I ended up just a little bit short on breath. Let me make very sure that I've got breath extension. There's a little quirk to the way that the breath meter works in this game, where if the breath meter has already spawned once, it's going to take longer to spawn again once you go underwater, meaning that if you've already had it on screen before, you actually functionally have a little bit more breath, and we do need that extra breath for this trick to work. I just had to make very sure that I did actually have it. I don't think this works. I think once again I called Midna too early. Yeah, this is looking like jail. Yep. We're in jail. At least we get a funny death cutscene. When there's too much in the way of the camera during various kinds of death cutscene in this game, it can look extremely silly. There's also variants of the like Link falling down, kneeling on the ground death animation where you'll just sort of be in his shoulder as he falls. It's hilarious. For right now, there's not a whole lot to be said about this. I just need to get it. Easier said than done, of course. There's a lot of little nuances to this trick, as there always are. And again, this is easily one of the harder things in the run. Not quite as hard as Sword and Shield skip, but certainly very difficult. Well, that wasn't it. Time to drown. Okay, this looks good. This looks good. Nice. Okay. Once again, really can't overstate how difficult that trick is, but that definitely took a little longer than it usually does. Still, we made it. Right there, I just saved and quit because the first room of Lakebed Temple is this long tunnel, and we definitely couldn't swim all the way through it without drowning. We just don't have enough breath for that. But because we have the Master Sword, the game assumes we've already beaten Lakebed Temple, meaning that our save point here, if we were to save and reload, is actually this first dry room rather than that tunnel, which is what it would be before you've beaten the dungeon. And so, because of that little quirk, we can actually get into Lakebed Temple. We would never be able to swim through the tunnel, but because of this, we don't have to. We can instead just save quit once we've made it into Lakebed at all to get into that, like, lobby. And then I'm going to use some more boomerang long jump attacks to make it across this first room very easily. Then I'm going to juke the shit out of this Los Alvos. If you roll past him on the left side, he can never hit you. On the right side, he almost always does, but on the left side, he almost never does. So that's a very nice little trick to know. There is a Tektite here that I am going to kill, because I do not want him to get in my way. And then a second one. I really don't have to do this, but I am going to take it very safe, because it's very easy to lose a large chunk of time in Lakebed when you really don't have to. So I'm just going to take it easy. Ow. Yeah, you actually can't roll on the stairs for some reason. This Tektite, it's actually rather important that I kill, because he might get in the way of a little trick in a second. Then we're going to get Uku here. This is going to be very important because we do need to actually start Zelda Twilight at some point, which means we won't be able to use Pillar Clip to get into Lakebed again, so we're going to need another way in, and Uku is just the thing. And I'm going to do banister jump there, just jump on down at the correct point, slide on the banister, and get on over to this door, which would normally be inaccessible at this point. We would need some keys and things to actually be able to get here, but by doing that jump, we can forget about all of that. And then I can do some more boomerang long jump attacks to make it across these platforms without ever needing to make them turn. which is also very convenient. And then more or less the same again. And there we are. And this, for those very familiar with the game, you will note is the back entrance to the Deku Toad boss room. And this is where early boss fights that I was talking about earlier is going to come up. Or rather, the more normal part of early boss fights, where, you know, the opening cutscene of the boss has already been skipped. And that means Deku Toad is on the ceiling. Which means if I just look up from the back door, we will be warped right into the arena to start the fight. You wouldn't normally be able to do that because you have to enter through the front door in order to play the first cutscene that causes Deku Toad to spawn in. And so the other cutscene wouldn't be active yet. But because we have early boss fights, we skipped that first cutscene by cheating. Oh dear. Okay, there we go. So we actually can do that. Oh, I got pushed away. Dang it. It's possible, if you already have the Master Sword out of order, to defeat Deku Toad in one cycle. It's not super difficult, but it's a little difficult. And unfortunately, I did mess it up there by just standing a little too close to her main body, which caused me to get pushed while I was hitting the tongue. Okay. So we're gonna have to do a second cycle here, but that's no trouble. Yeah, we were one slash away. That's very unfortunate. Oh well. Ew, gross. Link, you're not gonna touch that, are you? Oh. Anyway, Greifhaken. One of my favorite German item names. They're all good, but Greifhaken is peak, honestly. Yes. Had to take a quick look at my briefing. You understand. Anyway, now that we've gotten the claw shots, I'm going to save quit to get back to the start of Lakebed again, because you're not allowed to Uku out of the Deku Toad room. So this is the fastest way to get out of there, and now that's the map. I will equip Uku and get on out. Our next thing to do is to start the Lanayru Twilight sequence, but we're not actually going to do the bugs until a good bit later. But what we are going to do is make our way up to Zora's domain. The reason that we're doing all of this in such a weird way is just because it makes more sense for routing. In order to actually start collecting the bugs in Lanayru Twilight, you need to get the hot rock from the mouth of the volcano in Eldin. Not the mouth of the volcano. From Eldin. From Death Mountain. There we are. Yeesh. From Death Mountain. And in order to do that, you have to clear the Eldin Twilight. So why aren't we clearing Eldin Twilight first? Well, because you need to warp to Zora's domain with the rock. So ideally, we wouldn't have to warp out of Eldin just to set up Lanayru to the correct point where we have the portal, then warp back to Eldin to get the rock, and immediately warp back to Lanayru. Instead, what we're going to do is get the portal here in Lanayru, then warp to Eldin, clear Eldin Twilight, and immediately get the rock and then warp back here. That just makes a lot more sense. If I had hit Gorge Void, we would have been doing all of this a little bit more different still, and it would have looked a little more different, but as it stands, this is the fastest way to do it. Nice little 2-cycle there, or not 2-cycle, 1-cycle. That's the wrong number. Nice little 1-cycle. If you bait the Kargarok to attack you right on that slope, you can actually set it up to where you can hit him twice on one swoop, which speeds that fight up significantly because you don't have to wait for him to come all the way back around again. Right here, I'm going to try to hit a clip into a wall that's going to save about 6 seconds if I get it. I'm only going to do this once because if I fail it, you know, it's super slow, but I'm going to try it once at least. Nice. There we go. So now we can do the Kargarok flying sequence out of bounds, which is going to allow me to take a much straighter line towards the goal than we would if we were actually going through the river tunnel. You can see on the minimap that there's a big bend here in the middle, and by flying out of bounds, we can kind of just fly straight towards the end, for the most part, instead of having to take that big bend. So this is a little bit faster. Saves about 6 seconds, like I said. Interestingly, there is a little bit of a pulling effect on you. If you go too far away from the beaten path in this sequence, the game will try to pull you back in. And so I'm having to steer a little bit to the left every time I do a wing flap, just to make sure that I don't get sucked back in bounds. It's just one of those funny little video game things. Luckily, this here trigger does extend out of bounds as well, so we can't just hit the end sequence without needing to go back in bounds as well. Nice! Actually got a one-framer there out of skipping that cutscene. By doing a jump attack there, I can jump out of the range of a Midna text trigger before it even begins. So that way we can skip a second or two of talking to Midna. Unfortunately, this next Midna trigger is fully unavoidable. And I also forgot where the cutscene was, don't mind me. Interestingly, there's a Midna jump sequence coming up that does start with a Midna text, and you'll have noted before that I managed to get a one-framer on one of these. Every other Midna jump that starts with a text box in the entire game has a one-framer on it, but not this one, for some reason. Okay. Apparently I wasn't quite close enough for Midna to be happy with me. There we go. Now we've made it up to Zora's Domain, all I have to do is kill a few shadow beasts to spawn the portal, and then we'll warp right out of here. Unfortunately, this particular shadow beast fight is actually kind of a real pain. There we go, okay. Because they tend to stick very close to the walls, and so you have to be a little bit clever about your angle. Because if you hit the wall and interrupt your Midna charge attack before you've killed all the shadow beasts, you know, that's not good enough, and you're unfortunately going to have to do it all again. Now, because I didn't hit Gorge Void like I was talking about before, we're going to have to warp back to South Faron for a third time, and do Forest Escape for a third time, in order to actually get back to Eldin. You might think, but Willow, there was a portal on your map in Eldin, why didn't you just warp there? That's the Gorge portal, and unfortunately you're not allowed to warp there if there isn't a bridge, since the portal is directly over the Gorge, and if you were to warp in there, you would just immediately void out. And, you know, the game doesn't account for that. So, until there's a bridge, that portal isn't actually really real, and we can't go there. We're just gonna have to walk back. On the plus side, that means we get to listen to the Hyrule Field music again, which bangs. This time we won't be talking to the postman, unfortunately, but, you know, can't have it all. Upside of that is that the music will play uninterrupted. Coming up in Zelda Twilight, I'm going to do a trick called Rupee Roll to get across the gorge without needing the bridge. This is another of the more difficult tricks in the run, and it is probably going to take a lot of focus and a few attempts. What I'm going to do is dig up a yellow rupee that will enable me to get rupee text, put it in the boomerang such that it'll come to me at the correct time, and then do a boomerang long jump attack at the correct time to actually land on top of the fence overlooking the gorge, which you would normally immediately fall off of, but which the rupee text will allow me to fall off of on the other side by rolling before I start sliding. That will then allow me to do another boomerang long jump attack to fully clear the gorge itself. This whole thing is extremely difficult and very tightly timed. I'm not sure if this is going to work. I don't think it is. Okay. Good start. Good. So that's that first half of it. Now I need to actually position myself correctly saw it happening as it happened. Very unfortunate. Very unfortunate. What this means is I'm going to quickly transform Wolf and then save quit. I need to save quit because right now I have yellow rupee text and that we've already seen yellow rupee text. So any yellow rupees we pick up from here won't give us the text again, and I need the text to make the trick work. So I have to quickly save and quit in order to make us lose yellow rupee text so that I can retry. Advantage of this is we're now 10 rupees richer than we were before, but obviously I'd have preferred to just hit the trick immediately. We're just simply going to try it again. That was a clean rupee roll though, but unfortunately I messed up the positioning afterwards. Oh no. Okay, still got the rupee. That's big. Nice, okay. We got rupee roll itself again. Now we just line us up here. Nice. Okay. That trick is very, very difficult. Very happy to have hit that second try. That is very good by my standards. I will take that any day of the week. Now, I still have to be very careful here, because right here, after this gate, there is a cutscene trigger that starts the King Bulblin 1 boss fight, and if I hit that trigger, everything sucks. So I'm going to just hug the wall the entire way through until we get into town. Now we're in the clear. Okay. We just kill these shadow beasts, which is easier said than done. The terrain here in Kakariko Village is actually kind of a mess. There's a lot of little like sticky outy bits and whatnot, and so your midna charge will sometimes just sort of get interrupted inexplicably. It really sucks. Alright, but there we go. We've gotten our first actual Vessel of Tears, so now we're finally going to start collecting boujas. We skipped clearing Fair and Twilight altogether. We're never going to do that. But the other two Twilights we do very much need to clear because we need to do things in those regions that are only possible after doing that. However, the ways in which we're going to go about collecting the tears is going to be a little bit interesting. There's a lot of cool little tricks and sequence breaks here. First off, I'm going to kill that bug, then immediately run away, transform human, and wait next to the well for the bug to explode. Once it does, I'm going to side hop and just clip straight through the board. That board that's supposed to block your way into the well only really works on Wolf because you're not supposed to be able to be human here, similar to how you're not supposed to be able to be Wolf for the Lanayru Gate. So by transforming human there, we can kind of just cheese this whole thing and get into the sanctuary backwards, which skips having to watch the cutscene inside the sanctuary proper, so we can get the basement bugs. We're then going to exit the way that we came to finally collect the bug in the graveyard, which is why I waited for the bug to explode just now, because if I hadn't, there would still be a bug here rather than a tear. Moving right along, I'm going to do the hardest trick in the run and try not to read this sign. I did it. Ow. Well, you can't win them all. Anyway, the general store bug here is not very difficult. We're just going to bonk the wall, activate senses, and then repeatedly L-target, which for some reason manipulates the bug into coming down to us. Just holding L-target is not good enough. You have to spam it. I don't know why. Okay. Well, pretend that was fast. Pretend that was fast and cool. Once again, try not to read that sign. Here in Eld Inn, we're going to do something a little interesting. I'm going to immediately be attacked, let go of the ledge, pick up this stick, walk over to the torch, light the stick on fire, and then throw it such that it lines up with the other stick to immediately light the fire in the furnace, then target the bug to make it come down, and catch it. I don't need this stick. Then I'm going to bonk the bar so that the bug upstairs will come loose from its hiding place before I get there, lining me up perfectly. Never mind. The bulb lid got in the way, but still, lining me up almost perfectly to collect the bug immediately. We can then get another free little safety rupee from behind that bookcase, and then make our way back out of Eld Inn the way that we came, once again picking up a stick we don't need, apparently, and collecting that second tier on the way. You can also bonk that wall while entering the load zone, which makes everything look really funny. Next up is the abandoned house, where there's not a whole lot going on. We're just going to have to enter through the roof here. Then immediately B attack, activate senses, push this block, wait for the bug, immediately attack the bug, because if you do it immediately upon the cutscene ending, it has no time to move away from you. Then pick up the tier, go over here, try to hit a one-framer, fail, and leave. Of course, that was all according to plan. You understand. Next up is the bomb shop, where there's one bug waiting on the top floor. We're going to have to exit through this window in the side, or enter through this window in the side. There we go. Then, once again, I have to perform the arduous task of not reading a sign. I did it. Then kill this bug, then immediately walk up top here, stick my little leggy out so I can pick up the tier, and then leave. Next is the bomb house. There is a way to skip having to go inside the bomb house, but it's kind of tricky and I haven't learned how to do it yet. Instead, we're just going to do the bomb house more or less the way it was intended, where we're going to pick up this stick, light the stick on fire, collect a rupee, and then throw the stick at the fire. Okay. Whatever. That was one of the bomb houses of all time. Okay. That tunnel is incredibly jank. It's kind of unfortunate. I messed it up both on the in and outside. Mostly fine, though. This only leaves 4 more bugs, 1 inside the watchtower and 3 on the Death Mountain Trail. Midna will lament the fact that we had to blow up somebody's house. Link, however, is silently exulting in it. I don't need this rock or that rock. I just want to get on the... Thank you. Well, I guess Link just really felt like playing with some rocks. I think we all can relate to that every once in a while. When you see a really nice rock, you know? Rocks. Upside of the watchtower here is that while the bug takes quite a bit of time to actually become vulnerable, we can use that time to collect some extra rupees. So it's not all bad. I'm actually pretty rich for this point in the game at this point. I've collected a bunch of extra safety rupees, as well as I've had to do rupee roll twice, which gave us an extra 10. So we're actually pretty rich at the moment. I also hit a one-framer coming out of that dig spot. Death Mountain Trail here, we're just going to have to use a midna jump to get up. Not very difficult. And then we will have to dodge some squeebles. We haven't seen these things since back in the sewers, but they're going to become a more common enemy from here. The little squeebles. They mostly only show up in Twilight sections, but they do show up. And they will be extraordinarily common later in Palace of Twilight. This bug here can be kind of a jerk. Let's see how it goes. That's nice. Alright. Once again, I'm going to stick my leggy out to collect the tier, and then leave. We're not actually going to howl at that howling stone, we just simply don't need to. We will need to howl at a different stone later in order to eventually learn Ending Blow, since you'll note if you know the game well that since we're never going to complete Fair and Twilight, the wolf that would normally teach you Ending Blow is not going to ever spawn, so we will need to spawn a different wolf somewhere else in order to learn that skill, because you do in fact need it to beat the game. Death Mountain Portal is going to be very useful. Not only do we just need to beat these Shadow Beasts to get through the Twilight, we also will need this portal later. Or, if nothing else, it'll be fast to have. Okay, well. There we go. That was a good deal more trouble than it's worth, but... Are you serious? Link? That's not normally how you would deal with that bug, suffice to say. Going to quickly turn to the left here in order to be allowed to just easily dash onto that ledge. Oh no. No, it's here. Where is it? Eldon now cleared of Twilight, I'm going to immediately warp to Death Mountain to pick up the Hot Rock. No, that's Kakariko. The way that the map works in this game with warping is if you press A, whatever portal has been most recently moused over is just going to be where you go, even if you're not currently actually directly on any of the portals with your pointer. So unfortunately, excuse me, that means that we warped immediately to Kakariko just there, which is not what I meant to do. Gonna run around for a minute to dodge some of these falling rocks to preserve my health, and then the big one will fall, which is the one that we need. You might see some runners transform human here, and then warp to Zora's Domain with that. The reason being that they would perform a trick called Rutella Skip. I am not going to do this, and so staying wolf is actually slightly faster. Oh no. I have to leave. You'll see that a lot, where I'll do a quick little B attack after a text box, because the way to mash for text in this game is actually to, whatchamacallit, is to repeatedly press A and B together, meaning sometimes after a text box you'll just press A, which in most situations doesn't do anything, and sometimes you'll press B, which does a B attack, which is usually slow. It's a little unfortunate. There we go. Anyway, now that the river is flowing again because we've melted the ice, the lake is full, meaning we can make it to the Lanayru Spring, where we can get our next Vessel of Tears to clear Lanayru of Twilight as well. After we've done that, there won't be any more Twilight bugs to collect because we will never do Farron. We could, we just simply won't. That's midnight. There we go. Now that we have the Lanayru Vessel of Tears, we're going to go back to collecting bugs again. There's this sort of long extended sequence right here where you have to do Zelda Twilight and Lanayru Twilight back to back. And it's honestly fun. You get to stay in the bug hunting mentality for quite some time. This bug can be a real pain. There is a more or less consistent, easy way to do it, but if you do mess it up, he just starts running around everywhere, and it's the worst. I'm surprised that worked. This slope sucks. What? Now that we've gotten these couple bugs, I'm going to immediately go back to Zora's Domain to collect the Zora's Domain bugs. No. Come on. Link, please. Thank you. Alright. That bug can sometimes fly just barely out of reach. In general, the bugs in the Nehru Twilight are far more annoying than those in Elden. Right here, I'm going to grab onto a very particular part of this ledge in order to fall down right on that little slope there to get this bug. Link, please. The lily pad bugs are among the worst bugs in the entire game. They never behave. This was honestly very good for them. Get a couple extra bonus rupees from the grass. I'm taking a lot of safety rupees that I maybe don't need, certainly don't need any more. But the reason for that is that the main big chunks of rupees that we're going to get later on can potentially clip out of bounds in such a way that we will miss out on them. And so I'm just trying to cover my bases in case that happens. Okay then. Having gotten the bug here at Isa's house, we're going to go to Castletown. And unfortunately, that's going to take quite a while. The walk up to Castletown is pretty long. The only reason we have for even going to Castletown at all right now is that there's one singular bug there, which is going to cause this whole entire detour. But we're not done yet. Here in Castletown, the fastest way to move is actually by repeatedly using B attacks to dash cancel, since dashes don't actually really give you any extra speed outside of the initial, the initial dash. So just repeatedly dash canceling so that you'll be allowed to dash as often as possible is actually the fastest way to go. Cute little B attack to make it over to that ledge very easily. Then we just kill that bug. And then we warp back to the lake. Going to collect the bug here at Fire's house, and then howl at the grass to enter the river. The bug landed on the ground, that's great. This bug dies faster on the ground than in the water. I'm not sure if that's true of all bugs, I assume it is. Now we'll go up to the river. There's 4 bugs here, and they're really easy to get because as long as you're targeting them, the Cargarog will just automatically lock onto them and it basically can't miss. I like to hit that Bokoblin when I can. Or Bulblin, rather. That Bulblin Archer almost made it so that I couldn't get the bug. But we're fine. Now there's only 2 bugs left, one of which we like to call Derek, and the other of which is small and unimpressive. I just accidentally said yes. Oops. We'll have to go and hit another wall again. There we go. And this time I'll say no. The Twilight Princess community has a lot of funny little names for a lot of the enemies in the game. The boss bug here in Lanayru Twilight we call Derek. The Bulblin with which we perform Sword and Shield Skip is called Hugo. The Helmasaur that can get in the way of the boomerang long jump attacks in the second room of Lake Bed Temple is called Jake. And so on and so forth. We have a whole spreadsheet of this that I've been trying to compile recently of all of the different names for different enemies in this game. Okay, thanks, Derek. Interestingly, Derek will only actually attack you if he's been on screen for long enough. And when he's not on screen, he will slowly sink while he's moving around like that. Meaning, if you just perfectly keep Derek off screen at all times, it is actually possible to get him to keep sinking forever and never attack you, leading him to eventually reach the bottom of the lake. Since we actually want him to attack us to get the fight over as quick as we can, in any percent or really any other speedrun, we try to keep him on camera at all times instead. I'm going to do a funny little trick here where I'm going to target Derek's tentacles and then midna charge into the water, which is going to cause the game to freak out a little bit and instantly kill Derek. Normally, you'd have to wait out the midna charge animation of attacking all of his tentacles repeatedly, and then he would die. But by interrupting the midna charge, the game says, ah, fine, you did a midna charge, it's good enough. Alright, having done that, I'm now going to warp to Zora's Domain. Now that the Lanayru Twilight has been cleared, we can go steal bombs. bombs. The way that you would normally get your first bomb bag in this game is by buying it from Barnes. You would get a second one from Isa upon completing her first minigame, and a third from freeing the Goron at the bottom of Zora's domain. You would then get giant bomb bags by playing Isa's second minigame, which upgrades all of your bomb bags. However, we don't need all that many bombs. One bag will be more than enough for us. And so what we're going to do, rather than do any of that stuff, because getting that first bomb bag the way that you were supposed to would involve beating Goron mines, which we would rather not, we are going to instead steal a bomb bag from Isa without even playing her minigame. The way that that's going to work is we're going to need to be Wolf while inside Isa's house in order to be allowed to warp away. You can't normally transform inside Isa's house, and you can't normally enter it as Wolf, but if you managed to do that, the game would allow you to warp away, since warping away wouldn't involve transforming anymore. Oh wait, hang on, I'm not howling correctly. Oh, it's this one. There we go. I was howling the Snow Peak song. My bad. This howling stone right here is the one that's sort of most easy in our way. The stone as well as the wolf that it spawns. And so howling here in order to spawn a golden wolf to teach us the ending blow is the most convenient. Anyway, as I was saying, if we're Wolf inside Isa's house, we will be allowed to warp away, which will allow us to duplicate the bomb bag that she lends to you temporarily. The duplicated bag will then become permanent once we've save quit. In the meantime, how do we actually get into Isa's house as Wolf? Isa forcibly puts you in her house upon defeating the shadow beasts outside, and normally you would only be able to do that as human, since in order to trigger the shadow beasts, you need to talk to Isa first, and there isn't supposed to be a way to transform in between. However, by carefully navigating along the triggers that cause the fight, we actually can do this. We're going to transform behind the sign, talk to Isa to enable the triggers, then line Link up very carefully by stepping right here, side hopping, and then whoop, walking in just the right place, then transforming again, because again we want to do this as Wolf, to start the fight as Wolf, which you are not supposed to be able to do. Unfortunately, since we're fighting these shadow beasts as Wolf, we don't actually have access to a good way to kill them all at once. We're not allowed to mid-charge at this point in the game. And as human, you can just sort of do a spin attack, but the Wolf spin attack is hard-coded to not allow you to kill multiple shadow beasts at once with it, meaning we need to get a little creative. We're going to carefully line up the shadow beasts and buffer their attacks such that they're going to both be in end lag and stationary, then kill one with a B attack and immediately latch onto the other with a jump attack, which gives you just enough time to kill them both before anybody can resurrect anybody else. Finishing the fight as Wolf and allowing us to enter Isa's house as Wolf, at which point she's going to have an interesting conversation with the dog, give the dog bombs, and then the dog will immediately leave and come back. We warp to the portal that we just unlocked while the Isa cutscene that gets you inside her house is still there, because again, the game doesn't expect you to be able to warp out in between, which will trigger that cutscene again and give us a nice view of some grass. We then enter Isa's house again. She gives us another bomb bag, which causes some very strange shenanigans to happen on the item wheel. Peep this. Yeah, I don't know either. And then we will immediately warp away again, but this time to Zora's domain. We have now duplicated the bomb bag. You can keep doing this, but we only need one bag. It really doesn't make a difference, so no point to that. Instead, we're going to leave and go to Snow Peak. Stood still for a second there because I was still putting my water bottle down. Whee! Landing in the water here to avoid falling damage. Right here is the part of the speedrun where I unplug my controller. The reason for this is I need to do a glitch called map glitch, and the easiest way to do that is with universal map delay. There we go. Or universal midnight delay. I forget which it stands for. Forget it. In any event, what I just did was I opened the map and warped somewhere, but I pressed the map button on the same frame as the midnight call button. That's why I unplugged my controller, to be able to buffer both inputs at the same time. By doing that, the midna prompt will interrupt the warp, which makes it so that the warp sort of state of the world has been enabled, but we haven't actually gone anywhere. This means that any kind of voids and loading zones and that sort of thing are all disabled, meaning we can actually walk straight through this snowstorm without having the scent that's normally supposed to help with that. The scent, contrary to what you might think, doesn't actually act purely as a guide. There isn't a safe path through the snowstorm unless you have the scent in your inventory. Meaning a glitch like this can allow us to get through when we normally couldn't. Getting the reekfish scent that would normally allow you to do this would involve a long and complicated side quest that we actually are locked out of doing at all. So the fact that this is a glitch that exists is very helpful. Right here, I'm going to howl at this stone. Okay, hold on. There we go. There we are. I'm not actually going to finish howling here, though. The only reason I howl at the stone at all is to enter a different area and sort of reset myself, which gets rid of map glitch. We need to get rid of map glitch because if I didn't, this loading zone here in the dig spot to the connection cave wouldn't work, and we would get soft locked for entering it. I've done that many a time. And now, finally, almost an hour after collecting it for the first time, we are finally going to use the claw shot. Don't mind that second boomerang, it's not important. The claw shot is going to make navigating through the connection cave a lot faster, which is obviously useful. But unfortunately, there's these keys in the way. Yep. So you have to take aim very, very quickly at the vines up top if you want to beat the keys to the punch before they can freeze you. It can be a real hassle. Anyway, there we go. Next up, there is a trick here where you can use a boomerang long jump attack to actually jump into a void such that the game respawns you up at the top by the tree where Yeto is, and that way you can skip having to fight these shadow beasts. That's quite fast, but unfortunately it means that the blizzard won't get cleared, and you'll have to do the snowboarding sequence basically blind. That is very difficult and mostly just very dangerous, so I'm going to opt to fight the shadow beasts instead, which is far safer. This will make it so that the blizzard clears, which has two interesting effects. One, we can see, and two, the rupees that are normally there during the snowboarding sequence will be there because they only spawn after defeating those shadow beasts as well. That's going to be very nice because if I can get some of those, we can make it even safer for ourselves in case of that weird rupee clip that I was talking about before happening again. Unfortunately, I did mess up a little bit just there. It's faster to tell Yeto the truth and say that you're not on a spiritual journey rather than lying to him. Lying to him generates an extra text prompt that you have to give input on, which takes longer than just simple text boxes. See ya, Yeto. It's really funny to watch this cutscene while the blizzard is still going, because Yeto stops being visible like halfway through, and so the game just sort of stares off into the snow with nothing discernible to focus on for like a solid 5 seconds. During the snowboarding sequence, it's faster to be in the air than on the ground, so I'm going to try to keep jumping more or less at all times, and I'm even going to use spin attacks to give myself slightly more airtime. However, being on the ground also lessens the degree of control you have over the snowboard, so I'm going to sort of try to balance those two things out when I need more control. Like right here, for example. I'm going to try to jump onto the treetops to collect a couple extra rupees. I got them! Let's go! That's 70 free rupees that I don't need to basically do anything for. This is really overkill. We super don't need these, but the fact that we have them is going to be very nice just in case the game says screw you and clips the rupees that we'll need later out of bounds. Oh dear. Okay, there we go. The snowboarding controls are very finicky. Interestingly, while you're in the air, the game will still register every bit of directional input you do, but it won't actually apply it until you hit the ground again, meaning you get sort of massive bursts of turning speed for seemingly no reason if you input a bunch of directions while in the air. It can be very difficult to make work. Anyway, that gets us to Snowpeak. The Snowpeak Ruins sequence of any percent is a lot of fun. There's a lot of cool stuff in here. First things first, it's faster to walk up these stairs and then jump back down rather than just walking straight to this door for some reason. Then we're going to do a quick little long jump attack using the boomerang over this void to get over to this heart piece chest. We're not going to pick up the heart piece, why would we? Instead, we're just gonna... Where is it? Oh, it's over here. My bad. I was on the wrong corner. We're going to claw shot up through the floor. That floor you would normally destroy by placing a bomb on top of it, but so its underside doesn't have any collision. So by sequence breaking to get under it, using that boomerang long jump attack, you can actually claw shot up straight through it, which is pretty neat. This allows us to do this part of the dungeon backwards and skip a significant portion of it. Right here I'm going to do a trick called Ice Clip, where I'm going to clip through some ice. Easy as that. I don't need that cannonball. Alright. There we go. Ow. Next up, I'm going to do a trick called Freezered Skip, where I'm going to skip a Freezered. The way that this works is I need to get some invincibility frames by getting hit by the Freezered and then use its rotation to push myself through the door. There we go. Okay, now I am very weak, which is really bad, because if I get hit by the Dark Hammer mini-boss now, we will have to do Freezered Skip again. I really don't want to have to do that. Getting hit by Dark Hammer usually only happens if you're being an idiot, so I will try not to do this, but if you've watched me play any video games before, you'll know that I tend to have trouble with that sort of thing. My guy, are you okay? Okay, there we go. Then we simply attack the tail repeatedly, and killing him in one cycle is luckily very easy. That was scary. That gets us the ball and chain, which is the main reason we went to Snowpeak in the first place. You don't super need this item, but actually you super need this item. It's only actually needed for one thing and one thing only, but there's no other way to fight the Blizzetta phase of the Zant boss fight. Meaning, we kind of just need this item despite the fact that it really doesn't do much anywhere else. The rupee clipped out of bounds. Great. So this is why I've been picking up all of these extra rupees. I'm going to save quit back to the start of the dungeon, where there's another suit of armor with another bubble enemy inside it, which again has a rupee that's worth a lot, same as this one. Both of them carry one orange rupee, which is worth 100, which is sort of our main actual source of income during this run. I'm also going to drop some bombs, because I need my bomb bag to be empty for later. Okay, this one's rupee successfully dropped. I didn't manage to skip the text, though, unfortunately. Sorry, let me drop some more bombs. You can only ever have 3 bombs out at a time, which is why I'm making sure that I'm dropping bombs at most opportunities. Okay, I turned those around, unfortunately, but whatever. I'm going to use Uku here to work back to Lakebed Temple, like I was talking about doing way back when we were there the first time. And we're now actually going to go and beat Lakebed Temple, finally. Going to equip this and that. No, oh my goodness. There we go. Going to drop some more bombs while I can. Like I said, I need the bomb bag to be empty because I need to fill it with water bombs, but if you open a chest that contains water bombs while you still have regular bombs in your bag, the water bombs will just become regular bombs, and we really, really need them to be water bombs, so I can't afford to have that happen. I need to do this same long jump attack again, and it's kind of a pain because this time Jake didn't fall down, and so he's in my way, which is making the positioning much harder. This should be okay. There we go. Pull a bomb, use the bomb to blow up the stalactite. And now is the part where I drop 16 bombs into this waterfall. Dropping them in the waterfall instantly despawns them, which gets around the 3 at a time restriction by making sure that we have 0 bombs at a time on screen, which means we can drop them much faster here than anywhere else. With an empty bag, I will then get the water bombs from this chest that's very conveniently placed directly next to the waterfall in question, and then quickly make a safety save to make sure that if I really mess up, I have a save to go back to that has 10 bombs, because it's entirely possible that I'm going to need to refill my bombs. Once again, I'm going to juke this Lizalfos by simply going to the left of him. That always works. And now we have to do what's called boss key skip, where we're gonna skip the boss key. What a surprise. I'm gonna line myself up so that I can land on the side of the bridge, jump attack onto that part, line myself up with this, and then repeatedly target slash until I fall onto the bridge, equip the correct items, line myself up just a little bit further left, and then just oop, oop, oop. And there we are, into the boss chamber. This is the only boss key that we know how to skip, because for most bosses, entering the boss room is just an event that's tied to the action of opening the door. But for Morpheal, opening the door simply allows you into the little antechamber where the well is that you can fall into. And so clipping into that area allows you to get into the Morpheal boss fight just fine. But there's no such tricks for any other boss, so currently this is the only key we can skip. Luckily, there's several dungeons that we can just skip outright, so it's not that big of a deal, but still. The Morpheal fight is going to look a little bit different from what you might remember. Unfortunately, I got some bad RNG at the start there. You'll note that I don't have the Zora armor, which is why we needed the water bombs. As it turns out, there's a glitch you can do with water bombs that refills your air. So by pulling a water bomb, and then before Link actually pulls it out, force unequipping the iron boots, you can float with a water bomb in hand, allowing you to, when you drop it, refill your air. I don't personally fully understand how this works, you'd have to ask somebody else. But luckily, it means that we can get enough air out of our reserve of bombs here to actually fight Morpheal. Morpheal, unfortunately, is a very RNG-heavy boss still, and we already got some bad RNG right at the start, so we are having a bit of a tough time right now, but hopefully I'll be able to make it work. Hoping she sees me here. She doesn't, but maybe I can still reach her? Nope. She's doing a lot of doubling back, which is quite the opposite of what we want to see. Ideally, she'd kind of just keep swimming in the same direction over and over. That would make it a lot easier to hit her. Also, we want her to stay low to the ground rather than keeping going up like this. I can't afford to hit her here. We're already sort of running out of bombs. Theoretically, you only actually need 1 bomb to do this fight at all, but in practice, it's usually more like 4. Nobody really goes for 1 bomb. Lots of people go for 2 bomb, though, myself included. Okay. refill, please. Are you kidding? This is going abnormally terribly. I have 4 bombs left. And I haven't hit her a single time. Alright, see me? Thank you. Good. Okay, this is hit number 1. Theoretically, this is still fine. Oh shit, I'm on the pillar. Come down, come down, come down. This is sketch, but let's try it. Come on. Yes! Just barely enough air. So right there I used a regrab where if you're grabbing onto her with the iron boots, and then once she starts bucking, you unequip the iron boots on a frame where her head is moving upwards. You can actually sort of just spawn directly next to her without being shaken off. And then you can immediately re-grab her if you're quick. You can use that trick to do her in one cycle by only ever using 1 bomb to refill and then just getting double re-grabs in a row. That's incredibly difficult, and like I said, barely anybody goes for that ever. But it's possible. But doing it this way, where theoretically you only need 2 bombs, by just doing one re-grab on the second cycle, is very, very doable. That took quite a while, and we're basically out of bombs, but not dying or having to redo the fight is, you know, still perfectly fine for that fight. That fight is very hard. So we'll take it. We'll make it work. This does mean that I'm going to need to go out of my way to get a quick bomb refill in City in the Sky, but that's going to be quite a while away. I'm going to pick up this heart container because why not? Well, you know, the reason why not would be that it's kind of slow, but the advantage of it certainly outweighs that, I would say. Next up is a story sequence known as Midna's Desperate Hour, where Midna is going to get cursed and almost die, and we have to go to Princess Zelda to get her healed. This is going to mean a lot of running around the neighbor field, and then a redo of the earlier sewers and rooftop section. This is a lot of just like cool little movement, but there's not a whole lot to say about it, so I'm going to take it as an opportunity to mostly just rest my voice for a while. I recommend everybody stay hydrated. Trying to do my dash cancels here can sometimes result in accidentally talking to some of the cats and dogs, which I'm going to try to avoid. You have to get kicked out of the tavern here in order to set this cutscene that's about to play to being possible. push this block once, then climb onto it, so that you can just barely clear this. Now very carefully navigate across the top part of the tavern so as to not be seen. Don't drop any pots, and so on. This sequence kind of sucks because the ropes are a little bit janky. They don't always snap when you might expect them to, so it's kind of easy to fall down. Next up, we have to kill our first Poe. It's not very hard. This is the first of only 4 Poes that we're going to kill at all in this run, and it's just this one and 3 of the 4 Poes in Arbiter's Grounds. Collecting Poe Souls doesn't actually do anything for you in any percent, so there's just no reason to do that. You might think we'd have to get all 4 Poes in Arbiter's Grounds in order to beat that dungeon, but nah. We'll cover that when we get to it. That is not where the dig spot is. Alright, now we're back in the tower here. This time there's ropes and goblins that we're gonna have to avoid. And we can't use Midna to just simply Midna jump across a bunch of these gaps, so we are going to have to use the ropes. Once again, these ropes are a little janky, but they're not as bad as the ones in the tavern. Oops. If I'm fast, I should be able to make it to this bridge before it drops again. I wasn't, though. There we go. It's a little bit less tight if you've already avoided it, but it's still a little tight. Now we talk to Zelda, and Midna will be healed. Having done that, we'll spawn right outside Castle Town, which is incredibly convenient, because that's where the wolf spawned that we howled at the stone for back in Upper Zora's River before stealing the bomb back from Aiza. So while we're here, we're just going to go ahead and collect the ending blow from this wolf before we leave. Doing this will cause something very funny to happen. By collecting the ending blow from a different wolf than the first one, the cutscenes for the first wolf, which are different from every other wolf, are going to get a little messed up, and we're going to have the wrong camera angle. We're going to see the wolf turn into the skeleton, and Link will then turn and look behind him where there is nothing. It's incredibly silly. sword wields no strength unless the hand that holds it has courage. There is a way to line this up such that you will perform the ending blow in different parts of the Shade's body, such as the head or the crotch, but the fastest way to do it is simply just to hit him in the chest. This is that one little detour to Farron Woods that I was talking about way back when. Collecting the ending blow forces you to go back to Farron, since that's where that wolf would normally respawn you. Every other wolf will just simply put you back where you talked to the wolf, but the very first one will always drop you in Farron. So we have to quickly then warp to the lake in order to start our way to desert. Let's see if I can get on this ladder. It's harder than you might think. Wow, that was very smooth. That was awesome. It takes 18 seconds to climb this ladder. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. Maybe 19 if you stretch it. Oh no. I misremembered where the path was. This is bad news because swimming is incredibly slow, and swimming as Wolf doubly so, but you can't transform in water, so we're just going to have to wait. You have to hide Link's head behind this post in order to be allowed to transform here. It's very silly. Now we've made it to Gerudo Mesa. Once again, this is sort of just a long running section where there's not too much to say. We're going to transform Wolf because Wolf runs faster than human. I suppose I can explain what I was saying before about how we only need to get 3 out of the 4 pose in Arbiter's Grounds. The reason for that is just that the cutscene that says, okay, you've got all the pose, you can go through the door now, only actually checks for the last 3 pose and not Po 1. So we're never going to get Po 1 by doing an ingenious little skip involving a boomerang long jump attack, as always. And that'll be that. Similarly, the game also doesn't check for any fused shadow beside the last one from Lakebed, or any mirror shard beside the last one from City in the Sky, allowing us to skip Forest Temple, or well, skip completing Forest Temple, Goron Mines, Temple of Time, and Snow Peak Ruins. The only dungeons we actually need to beat are Lakebed to get a fused shadow, City in the Sky to get a mirror shard, Arbiter's Grounds to get access to the mirror chamber, and of course Palace of Twilight and Hyrule Castle, because you need to beat Hyrule Castle to beat the game, and you can't get into Hyrule Castle if you haven't beaten Palace of Twilight. So, very straightforward there. Gonna use the ball and chain to break this open, then transform Wolf, and sneak in here, then clip past this second fence. This is a little bit finicky, it might take me a second to do, but If the Boblin archers follow you, the camera gets a little bit screwed here, and it's very unfortunate. You have to hit a particular angle with the wall in order to be allowed to clip here. Linky, come on. We're getting so close. Thank you. Okay. If there were no Boblin archers there, it would be a little bit easier. And now I'm going to perform map glitch again, so it's once again time for me to unplug my controller. I'm going to warp to the lake, only I'm not going to do that. Then going to pull my sword and back up past the point where the area transition normally is, and then when I fall into the void, there won't be a death plane because of map glitch, similar to what happened back at Snow Peak, and I will then do a jump slash. If you look at the minimap, you'll note that Link is moving forward slowly. Eventually, he will hit a cutscene trigger, which extends infinitely down into the void to start the King Boblin 3 fight. He will then be warped into the King Boblin 3 arena, and everything will be peachy keen. I will, however, quickly save. The reason for this is that if I die inside map glitch, the game will soft lock, and so I really don't want to lose all the progress we've made just to accidentally getting hit by King Boblin here, since one hit from him will be enough to kill me at this point. I wouldn't usually die to him, because clearly that boss fight is not very hard, but I do want to cover my bases a little bit. Oh. Link will then be burned alive. And with that, we can enter Arbiter's Grounds. This dungeon effectively consists of two halves. One where you have to catch a bunch of Poes and relight some candles that are going to unlock the big door, and then one where you have to make your way to the spinner and then use the spinner to make your way back to the final boss. That last bit we're not really going to do because, as it turns out, just sort of save quitting is much faster, so we're not going to do any of the cool spinner rooms in between. But we are going to sequence break those first two sections significantly. Like I said before, we're going to skip getting the first Poe altogether, and then we're going to also sequence break the way that we're going to get the others. Sort of part of the same trick, really. And then we're going to also sequence break our way to the spinner by going through that part of the dungeon backwards. This torch always gives me some trouble. But not today. Lovely. Now there's a long cutscene where the game tries to visually explain what's going on with the Poes. So instead of fighting Poe 1, I'm just going to go to the left here, you, and you. And then I'm going to use a boomerang long jump attack to get over to this pillar in the sand. I'm going to then get popped up onto the pillar and grab onto this ledge to make it over here. Then use a second boomerang long jump attack. Shoot. Let's void out real quick. Didn't quite get enough distance. That's unfortunate. So we're gonna have to do that again. Shut up. Silly Muldorms. Muldorms can really get in your way here. There we go. Okay, that trick is much harder than I'm making it look. And why? Why not? What? Okay, well, I know how to fix that, but you don't normally have to actually target anything for that second jump attack. There's just not really a reason to. The boomerang will go high enough without it, but I guess I'll do it for safety. I'm also going to just quickly break these skulls. Yep, for a heart. Perfect. There we go. You really don't ever need to do that, but oh well. Next up, there's a sort of mini-boss of sorts, where there's this Stalfos enemy. We're just gonna... Yep, there he goes. It would have been even faster to use a bomb, but since I have basically run out of bombs, I am not going to do that. Oh, wait, it's lamp, claw, there we go. Now we watch this door open all the way. Yep. Alright. Time to fight Poe 4, which is naturally the first Poe we're going to fight. It's normally the last one, and it sort of functions as a mini-boss of sorts. It's got a whole extra mechanic that the other Poes don't, where it makes copies of itself and you don't know which one is real. You kind of just have to wait for it to become vulnerable. It's an incredibly boring and low-agency boss fight, but we do have to kill this Poe, so it is what it is. There are ways to manipulate the Poe into starting its attack cycles sooner, allowing you to wait for less long, but they're kind of finicky, and I don't recall how to do them, so I'm not going to bother. Defeating Poe 4 also gives us an opportunity to collect the Poe scent, which we will need in order to make our way to Poe 2, and consequently Poe 3, which is locked behind Poe 2, or behind the area Poe 2 is in, anyway. Normally, you would kill Poe 1, get the Poe scent, use the Poe scent to make your way to Poe 2. On your way there, pick up a key, which will allow you to get to Poe 3, and then continue past Poe 3 in order to get to Poe 4. We are going to do it a little bit differently. I went into the wrong door, by the way, don't mind that. Killing Poe 4 gets us the Poe scent, and then we'll make our way back through this room that we sequence broke through earlier with those boomerang long jump attacks, which is what Poe 1 skip actually is, basically. We're going to push this box. It'll take a while. We need to push it far enough such that it remains pushed. This is very important. Collect a little bonus rupee from that chest, and then make our way to the dig spot that you need the Poe scent for to make our way to Poe 2, and the small key that's locking Poe 3. On the way there, we'll say hi to Poe 1 again, but continue not killing him. Hi, Poe 1. Anyway. Interestingly, after completing the Poe's section of the dungeon and entering the second half, Poe 1 will just simply completely despawn as if you had killed him, but his brazier still won't light. In this room, there's an annoying Reddead, which I'm going to have to kill. I want that chest, please, thank you. That gets us the small key, which we'll need to make our way to Poe 3. And then I will transform human so that I can claw shot up here, past this rat. Then it's time to fight Poe 2. Poe 2 is probably the most annoying of the 4 Poes. Po 4 has some claim to that because it has the whole extra mechanic, but Po 2 has friends, which is arguably worse. The two bubbles that spawn on the other side of the room will rush over to where Po 2 is, even if you don't go over there yourself, and they'll get involved with your midna charges, which makes everything very difficult. It makes it hard to actually hit Po 2 when you mean to, and just generally removes control from you. There are good ways to set it up and sort of manipulate the way that everybody moves in order to hit Po 2 consistently anyway. But another option you have is just to go out of your way for just a second or two to kill the two bubbles before then coming back for Po 2, which is what I opted to do here. It's slightly slower theoretically, but more consistent. We're actually really low on health. I should look for like a skull or something to drop some hearts. Luckily there's plenty of those around, so I should be okay. That last ledge on the stairs there actually can't just be ran over. You always have to climb that. Even as human, you have to do a little big step in order to make it up there. Any hearts? Nope. Okay then. Well, luckily there's a guaranteed heart drop in the next room, but we're definitely a little bit low. Strictly speaking, it should be pretty difficult to take any damage for the entire rest of the dungeon, but it's certainly not impossible, so I'm going to take my hearts where I can get them. There we go. Okay, well. Once again, stairs not being dashable. This Redead is kind of in an annoying position, but luckily his back is turned to us, meaning he won't actually see us until we pop out in front of him. And by using the Stalk-in to also lock on as a midna charge, we can make several midna charges past the Redead in order to hit him repeatedly despite only targeting him once. We can then do a similar thing to Po 3, assuming that the Stalk-in sort of comply. It didn't. Going to have to do this with a regular attack, which is a little bit slower. It's fine though. I missed! No. That happens very rarely. That does heal him back up to full, which is unfortunate. There we go. Okay. If you end up, after collecting a pole soul, with your face sort of up against a wall very close, sometimes the camera will freak out a little bit and give you a close-up of Link's snout, which is excellent. With that, we've collected all 4 asterisk pose, and we are now free to move on into the second half of the dungeon. I will collect another health refill from this skull with a guaranteed health drop. We're now basically full. This should be a little bit safer. As you can see, there's only 3 flames here, and you can still hear Po 1 softly rattling. And yet the door will open. Po 1 is simply not important. Next up, I'm going to get the boss key early by sort of just wedging myself between this wall and this pillar by B-attacking repeatedly through the sand. Wolf Link can kind of just not sink in quicksand. If you just repeatedly B-attack, he will never sink, which is very convenient for tricks like that. This allows us to get the boss key much earlier, and then we will move on into the room that you're supposed to... into the direction that you're supposed to come here from, to quickly make our way to where the spinner is. I'm going to do a clever little jump across here. Whee! Into the sand, and then immediately transform the wolf. We're basically doing this part of the dungeon backwards, like I was saying before. And so we don't need the spinner for any of this. Normally you would use the spinner to do this in the other direction, but that's not what we're up to. There's some more Stalfos here, which once again it would be faster to kill using bombs, but since I barely have any bombs, I'm going to use the ball and chain. do actually need to fully kill the Stalfos here, including the little corpses they leave behind, or else they'll just reanimate themselves and the door won't even open. Ow. These beetles have a name, but I forget. I'll have to pull up the spreadsheet if I want to find that one out. We cut one rope to start the Death Sword boss fight, and then this is going to be a little bit interesting. There are ways to skip Death Sword altogether, or at least the second phase of them. But the fight itself is actually pretty interesting. The first phase, you just kind of have to hit him a bunch as Wolf. There's not much to it. But in the second phase, I'm going to immediately transform so that I can hit him with the claw shot before he starts flying away. Okay, sometimes he just phases through it, which really stinks, but oh well, we still got him. He's then going to fly around a whole bunch until he gets close enough to hit me, at which point I will hit him instead, and then simply chain sequences of 3 hits together without ever finishing a combo. By doing this, he will never get unstunned, and we can just kind of keep wailing on him until he dies. Despite the fact that opening the chest that contains the spinner is going to turn me back into human very shortly, it's still slightly faster to actually transform Wolf here, just because he runs that much faster. We're then going to save quit, as we often do after collecting dungeon items. In this case, we save quit because the way to the Stalwart Arena is actually very close to the start of the dungeon, and it would take way longer to walk there from where the spinner is than from where we begin. So save quitting is much faster. It would be way cooler to do it from where the spinner is, since there's a bunch of cool spinner rails and places to go up and do all sorts of cool movement, but this is faster. Wolf Link is not affected by quicksand, as I mentioned. The drain prompt at the bottom here seems to imply that you have to mash extraordinarily quickly in order to turn this mechanism, but that's really not true. All of the mashing prompts in this game during the wrestling sequence or during spinners or anything like that are really overdoing it, and you actually only need to mash a couple of times a second in order to achieve maximum efficacy on most of them. The wrestling one is the closest to the truth, where if you can mash at a perfect 15 hertz, it is actually better, but every other one just sort of doesn't matter too much. And that brings us to the Stalwart boss fight. The Stalwart boss fight is difficult to say the least. There's a way to skip this boss fight, which is even more difficult, and I will not be doing. But the boss fight itself is still plenty interesting. It is, however, also hard. Stalwart sort of plays out, at least the first phase, like a pinball machine, where you have to send Link in the spinner rocketing around, bouncing off of all the little minions that Stalwart spawns in order to eventually hit Stalwart's spine. You have to do this 3 times, and they get progressively more difficult. Unfortunately, a lot of this is random chance, and so it is occasionally very messy. was very nice on the second cycle. He is not usually that easy to hit there. Yep, makes sense. Yep. Figures. Okay. Okay, this is good, this is good. Nice. That's pretty good by my standards as far as Stallard 1 goes. Stallard 2 is a little more interesting. We're going to have an opportunity to actually knock him down right at the start of the fight without having to get all the way up the pillar the way that you're normally supposed to. And then, whether we hit that or not, we'll kill him in one cycle by just simply doing repeated spin attacks rather than anything else. Not sure where I am right now. Very convenient location. Okay. I'm going to try to time my rolls here such that I can get an early knockdown. Nice. Now we just repeatedly spin attack until he dies. Easy as that. That was a very good Stallard fight by my standards. I'm very happy with that. Once again, I am going to pick up this heart container, even if it's really not needed for anything, just because it's nice. And then I'm going to spin her on over. You might think that now that we have the spinner, we are going to be using that for movement from here on out, but unfortunately the spinner is actually very slow. It's fast in that room, but that's only because the spinner just is hard-coded to move faster in that room than anywhere else. I should also be transformed to human right now. There's a couple of rooms like that in the game where the spinner moves at a faster speed, but very few, and we're not going to go into most of them. So we're really not going to use the spinner for anything besides spinner rails from here on out. Or spinner sockets, I suppose. Not quite the same thing. What? There we go. Now, you're supposed to watch a cutscene now where you like raise the mirror pedestal and find out the mirror is broken and all this stuff, but I'm not going to do that. Instead, I'm simply going to warp to Kakariko Village. You might have noted I zoomed into Kakariko Village before warping there, and you might be wondering why. The reason for that is you're not normally allowed to warp out of this sequence until you've watched the whole cutscene with the mirror and the sages and all the stuff. And I don't want to do that because it's slow and it would take forever. But interestingly, the little prompt that stops you from being able to warp away just sort of doesn't occur if you zoom all the way in on the map before pressing warp. So we're going to have to do that from here on out every time that we warp. But that's only a handful of times, and so it's easily worth the time that it saves by not having to watch those cutscenes, since not all of them can be skipped. Right here, I'm going to transform Wolf at the correct time to clip past this statue. Easy as that. To collect the broken sky cannon. Midna is once again not going to let us warp because there's a weird guy in the cellar that actually isn't there. But if I just simply use the map to warp rather than talking to Midna directly, she will ignore that completely. If we then also zoom into the lake in order to avoid the earlier problem about the mirror prompt, we can actually warp this cannon in spite of two separate things that are supposed to prevent us from doing so. It takes 300 rupees to repair the cannon, which is exactly what we have, and also exactly the maximum capacity of our wallet, so that's convenient. I'm not actually supposed to talk to Plum here, that was an accident. But, oh well. Thanks, Plum. Luckily, animal friends don't actually prevent Link from transforming the way that human people do, or human adjacent. So spawning Plum in there doesn't prevent us from being able to transform in order to then talk to Fire. If it did, we'd probably have to reload the area, which would be a real pain, but it doesn't, so forget that. Funky music time. There we go. Uku will join us inside the cannon, and then we'll make our way to City in the Sky. I love the Uka. I mean, listen to this. Aren't they so cute? I genuinely am very fond of the Uka, jokes aside. I do think that they're a very cool set of characters. And City in the Sky is probably my favorite dungeon in this game, at least from a casual perspective. Now, I'm going to have to sort of roll around the edge of this area here in order to, wait, yeah, sorry, one more. Shoot. In order to get to this chest. Because I need bombs. Water bombs, 15 of them. Very excellent. That'll make up for the issues we had at Moorfield. I do need more bombs in order to actually beat the game, so this was basically just required. Now then, having done that, we can actually start City in the Sky properly. First things first, I'm going to stand on the stairs and shoot this thing with my claw shot. And then we're going to do some cool long jump attacks across some gaps. I pressed that a little too early. Whoops. Let me try that again. There we go. Alright. That Helmosaur doesn't often get in the way, but when he does, oh boy. There we go. Alright. Now then, it's very important that I open this door extremely carefully without getting too close to it. This is to ensure that the fan up on the top in this room doesn't turn on. Oh, oops. There we go. having that fan be off means that we can actually just sort of go straight to the boss key later without needing to go through a whole bunch of rooms that you'd otherwise have to in order to get there. Right now we're just on our way to collect a small key to advance towards the mini-boss of the dungeon, but that whole boss key business will come in later. Cool little long jump attack to skip that gap. You can just claw shot to the vines, but doing the long jump attack is a little bit faster. I went around the wrong side of the item wheel. Kleinen Schlüssel. Okay, not quite right. Now I'm going to have to skip a very important cutscene. I should probably safety save here. I'll safety save. Why not? If I was going to safety save, I should have safety saved before trying to do the fan skip back at that door, but whatever. Let's do one now. So the goal here is we're going to use a pea hat, one of these floating enemies, to target and jump onto this here rock to then make our way over here. Perfect. That looks very innocuous, but that skips us past a cutscene trigger that is on those stairs where Argarok would destroy this bridge. Destroying the bridge is one thing, and that has all sorts of negative consequences for us, but above all else, that cutscene would also set our save quit location to somewhere different than it is now. Where it is now is the small key chest all the way at the end of that bridge that we were just at. That is going to be very relevant for us later because it is a much better save quit location than anything else we could get. Same way I did with the first bridge, although I didn't comment on it, I'm going to try to cancel the spinner right before the bridge completes in order for it to have enough speed to finish completing, but where I can do a roll like this to get a little bit of extra distance, basically in the middle of the bridge cutscene, as it were, without needing to spend extra time spinning it that I wouldn't need to. Next up is some more long jump attack shenanigans. So I'm going to equip the boomerang again. Claw and ring, there we go. Screw that Helmasaur, we don't need to deal with that. And just whee on over through this gap. That's much faster than going around that room the intended way. In this room, we're also going to do a long jump attack, but it's going to be off of an enemy for once, rather than off of the boomerang, which is pretty cool. We don't get to see those very much. Unfortunately, I messed it up. I was standing just a little too far away, so the tile worm didn't let me target him. That's unfortunate. I'm going to just quickly grab a heart from these pots. There we go. Let's just get rid of that piece. There we go. We do need the wind to be there in order to do that long jump attack. So that's a little unfortunate there. There we go. Pull out the claw shot before entering this room. And then we're going to try to use the claw shot in order to scare these two Dynalphos into jumping off the edge and dying. We got one of them. The other one will die to a spin attack. Very nice. It is possible to get both Dynalphos with that claw shot strat, but it's kind of difficult. Oh, I hit a dead pixel. That's unfortunate. Okay. Either I just hit the same dead pixel twice, or there's a little row of dead pixels there that I wasn't aware of. It might be that latter. A dead pixel, for reference, is a part of a grabbable wall where you can't actually grab onto it, and when you reach it with the claw shot, you just fall down. Or, in some cases, get stuck, where you're not allowed to claw shot again with the double claw shots, even if you don't fall down. we go. In this room, I'm going to try to do a very cool strat where I'm going to take this Uka up to a wall and then actually use it to clear a gap that you're not supposed to be able to clear. I'm going to stand right here, and then I'm going to just... No, alright, I didn't get the jump that I needed. So we're going to have to do this the casual way. Which is fine. It's not that slow. Where's the bird? There's the bird. Hitting that switch is what turns on this last fan, which is naturally very important. That is, if you're doing the casual strat anyway. Skipped that cutscene a tad too early, so I just opened the pause menu. Okay, not quite right. There we go. This gets us to the Eralphos boss fight. And this is a cool one, because we're actually not going to fight it! Instead, we're going to perform Eralphos Skip. Eralphos Skip used to be just a very straightforward pixel-perfect hit-it-or-don't kind of trick, but we've since managed to come up with a setup for it, which involves buffering a vertical angle, which I'm going to try to do here. That makes it a lot easier. So, first things first. 1, 2, 3, 4. Then I'm going to go all the way up, pull the item wheel. Not quite. There we go. Ah, shoot. I accidentally moved. You really can't afford that. Right, we have to do it again. There we go. Easy as that. So by doing that, we can grab onto the claw shot target that's on the inside of this little treasure room and just fully skip having to fight the boss. Then, in true dungeon item tradition, I will immediately save and quit. And like I was saying before, this is going to spawn us back at the small key chest where we were before, rather than anywhere else. Which is very important. At this point, the cutscene trigger that we were trying to dodge with the P-hat earlier is gone, and we no longer need to worry about that. So we can actually just walk up the stairs like a normal person this time. There's still wind, though. It's also still faster to enter the main room via this window than anywhere else. The run is going alright, cool. It is not great, but it is alright. I'm going to use the double claw shots to get up on this pillar. Okay, a little bit of analog glitch there. That's a thing I haven't explained yet. Maybe I'll get a chance to later. But for right now, I'm going to grab onto these vines, and then we're going to do a trick called Kai Clip, where I'm just going to jump onto this fan blade, turn around, and then hit a very particular spot on this part of the grate. And when I say very particular, I really do mean very particular. I think that works. What this should let us do is clip the claw shot past this first grate to hit a second. Looks like no. Shoot. I obviously meant to land back up there. That was unfortunate. Oh well. Alright, let's try that again. I think I know what went wrong there. So we're just gonna do it again. Okay, thank you. Silly Helmosaurs. Alright, so let me just walk a little bit forward. Not quite that far. Alright, this looks much better. I don't actually know. Okay, we got it. So now I just have to hit this very particular angle with the claw shot. And there we are. We clipped the claw shot right past one gray in order to land on another. This Helmosaur here is called Jenkins. Or Helmosaurus, rather. That gets us the boss key significantly faster than you're supposed to, and it prevents us from having to go to the outside section of City in the Sky at all, which is naturally very useful. Whee! Landing on these stairs prevents us from having to take any fall damage there, because the stairs are slightly higher than the rest of the floor, and it's just barely high enough to avoid taking fall damage. Now, because these fans aren't on, since we haven't done really anything that we were supposed to do in this dungeon, I'm going to have to find a way to skip past them, and luckily, the claw shot and boomerang allow us to do just that. By claw shotting onto these from somewhere higher than them, we can actually grab onto the tops of them. And by then using the boomerang to set up a long jump attack off of this pillar, we can make it all the way over to the fan tower without needing to turn on any of those fans. The fans in the fan tower are just on normally, and the ones that aren't we can turn on from inside, so those are fine. And lucky too, because these ones are actually vertical, so we would not be able to just skip past them in the kind of a way that we just did those. Okay. There we go. It is possible to sort of skip out on some cycles in this room and go a little bit quicker, but it is pretty difficult. And I did not do it even remotely correctly, so we're just waiting, which is fine. Alright. So. Yep. Nice. Quick little full heal. Very convenient fairy. Okay. Time for Argarok. This boss fight is kind of slow. Just in general, it just takes a long time. But there is a lot you can do to help speed it up, and it's a pretty fun one for that reason, because there's just a bunch of cool tech and fun strats in it. So, hopefully, I'll put on a good show with it. I'm gonna just walk to the edge here, and back a bit, so that I can try and grab onto this vine sort of as far up as possible, so that we don't have to climb very far. That was alright. You can go higher than that. Climbing is really slow, so. Alright, having done that, I'm going to quickly equip the iron boots, since we'll need them, and then we will just have to wait, because the first thing Argarok does in this fight is take a bit of a stroll. So I'm just gonna wait around by this pillar and throw a skull off and bonk my head a couple of times, and then I'm gonna make my way back to the center, equip the boots, and wait. The first phase of Argarok consists of 2 cycles, and normally you'd have to wait like that in between both of them, but if I do this right, we won't have to wait for the second one. Very nice. If you make your way up onto that pillar high enough, fast enough, Argarok won't fly away in the first place, and you can grab onto him quickly. That makes that phase go by much faster. I'm going to quickly take off the iron boots, then jump off like any normal person would do when they saw a dragon like that. Then I'm going to quickly roll upright 3 times, put the iron boots back on, claw shot at least halfway up the second panel of this pillar, to then immediately claw shot up to the last panel of the next pillar, and target this P-hat. I'm going to claw shot to it when Argarok roars, and then simply wait for a second before dropping a little bit, and then claw-shotting the next P-hat. This makes it so that Argarok gets tired of breathing fire immediately because he believes we've fallen, allowing us to grab onto his back without trouble and without needing to wait. We're going to repeat that exact sequence the same way a second time for the second cycle, but the third cycle will require us to get a little bit more creative since it functions differently. Ooh, this might not work. That's fine, okay. Only barely, but it's fine. There we go. Now on the third cycle, Argarok is going to try to juke us by turning his flame around halfway through. And so his behavioral patterns are a little bit different. So we're going to need to also change ours. Ooh, this might also not work. Yep. I don't think that's high enough. It is, wow. Okay, cool. So I'm going to take off the boots, then immediately claw shot to 3 more P-hats after the first, then put on the boots when Argarok's flame reaches the P-hat behind me. Then take them back off when he starts to breathe fire on the other side, immediately claw shot over to the next P-hat, and then grab onto him to finish the fight. Very nice. I'm very glad I got all of that. That is not easy, and I've spent a lot of time learning that. The timing for all of that is a lot stricter than it looks. Well, okay, it wasn't particularly strict here in terms of the timing for all the P-hats, because I did a bunch of tech on my way up the pillars to help win a little bit of extra time. That is much tighter than it looks, suffice to say. It's fun, though. It's very fun. Very satisfying way to fight that boss. And much faster. Doing all of that successfully the way that I just now did saves, like, a minute? Altogether? Like, it's a big deal. Maybe a little less than a minute. I'm not too sure, but around there, anyway. I'm gonna once again just pick up that heart container because why not? The handful of seconds of time lost from picking it up are just never going to weigh up against the advantage it'll give me for the later dungeons. Not at my level. Really good runners of this game will usually only pick up the one heart container, just the one after Morpheal, and no others. But if you're newer at the game, those couple of seconds just aren't worth it. So I get them all. Well, not quite all of them. I don't get the one in Palace of Twilight because it's really out of the way. Oh, I forgot to equip the iron boots. That's unfortunate. Oh well. If you have iron boots equipped here, you can actually land directly on the ground rather than landing in the water, which is much better because the next thing we need to do is warp. And so you can't do that in the water, so we prefer to land on the ground. Okay, apparently I wanted to zum Wolf werden rather than Baben. Mirror Chamber, let's go. So now we're finally going to go to the Mirror Chamber and watch some cutscenes. Only the cutscenes for having the last Mirror Shard and being allowed into Palace of Twilight are going to override everything else. And in fact, the pedestal has already been raised, as you can see, when it isn't normally supposed to. Wait, no, no, it hasn't. Sorry, no, my bad. That was the pillar, the pillar itself. This thing wasn't here yet. My bad, my bad. In any event, all that to say, we don't have to watch the cutscene of it raising in the first place, or talk to the sages, or any of that stuff. And conveniently, the cutscenes for Palace of Twilight are actually skippable, unlike the others, so this easily makes all of that trouble with the warps worth it. We will still need to do the zoom-in warps even from here, because it's still true that we haven't watched those cutscenes, so Midna is still going to keep telling us that we shouldn't warp unless we zoom in. But there's only actually one more warp in the run from here, so, you know, that's still just not a big deal at all. Palace of Twilight is a very difficult section, but it is also incredibly linear and kind of boring. This is probably the least interesting part of the run as a whole. There's a lot of cool little things in movement and whatnot, as there always will be, but there's just not really any like sequence breaks or anything like that in this dungeon. The reason for that is that every single room is locked behind a small key chest, and so there's just not a whole lot to do except for get all of those keys. You can't like clip past anything or skip over something. There's just none of that. Every single room is locked behind a key. Speeding up Palace of Twilight is like one of the main sort of holy grails, if you like, of Twilight Princess, in the sense that there just really doesn't seem to be a reasonable way to do it, even theoretically. And skipping this dungeon altogether seems a lot more realistic than speeding it up internally. Having said all of that, while it's a little bit boring in that way, in that you kind of just have to do everything, and a lot of it is just simple movement, and, you know, it's a little bit whatever, it's still a pretty fun dungeon to do overall. I quite enjoy being in here most of the time, and I really don't mind it very much. There are certain things about this dungeon that are incredibly frustrating, certain rooms in particular that are just very punishing or a little bit silly, including one that'll come up later that the community has affectionately dubbed Stupid Room, because it is stupid. But on the whole, like, there is a lot of cool little optimizations here, and it's just, you know, it's fine. But it's a little bit samey, more than anything. You just kind of have to fight a lot of enemies. Anyway, we're now onto our first of two mini-bosses in this dungeon. This is the first of the two Phantom Xants. Both fights are entirely identical, and my goal will be to not deal too much damage to him such that he won't start zapping around enraged, but will instead just simply respawn slowly in a way that I can actually hit. We're gonna try to do this in exactly 3 cycles, but it's very possible that I'll need a 4th if I don't get the exact right amount of damage. Nice, good first cycle. Good second cycle. We're set up for it. Dang it. No, it was right there. Unfortunately, he's just going to teleport around like this until he stops feeling like it, which may take a while. There it is. So yeah, unfortunate 4th cycle and an unfortunate enrage. But that's the trick, is if you don't get exactly the right hits, he will just sort of do that. He's very volatile. I'll get a redemption on the second one. For now, though, we have won ourselves our prize, this soul, which we're just going to go ahead and take with us right here. Going to throw it into the socket. Hopefully the cutscenes for the socket activating and this hand waking up are going to overlap. They didn't because I missed the socket. I missed it some more. Oh well. All this means is that I'm going to have to fight these squeals. If I'd managed to get the cutscenes to overlap, I wouldn't have to do that. Whee! There we go. I'm going to be using a tech called L-sliding repeatedly throughout this dungeon, where when you grab onto an object that Link can grab with the claw shots, that you'll pull towards you as opposed to pulling Link towards it. If you press and hold L and then press a direction, you can actually sort of slide just a little bit in that direction. We're going to use that basically every time we grab onto a soul in order to just slightly move in wherever it is we're trying to go. It's going to help just very slightly speed up this dungeon all throughout. And in this case, it actually helps us skip an encounter with some squeebles altogether, because for some reason, while you're L-sliding, that particular trigger just doesn't activate. And so if you manage to L-slide all the way through the trigger that spawns the squeebles won't spawn. That way we don't have to deal with them. That backmost Baba that we just ran past is called Clarence. There's a one-framer here between walking out of the door and the soul healing this Twilight in front of us, where you can actually throw the soul. I'm not going to do this right now because I'd rather keep it in hand, but for the second soul in the East Wing, it's actually faster to do that, and so I am going to be trying for it. For right now, though, I'm just going to drop this soul into its socket and then quickly roll onto this platform, such that it'll already start to rise inside the cutscene. Then I'm going to equip the boomerang to long jump attack across this gap. That's a little bit faster than waiting for the platform to get all the way over. In this room, I'm going to very quickly roll and then walk a little bit up to the very edge of this platform to then claw shot to a faraway claw shot target. If I do this quick enough, I should be able to drop right down onto the platform. Nice. This, for reference, is the room that we call Stupid Room, because it is stupid. Okay. I'm just going to wait for this Zanthead to come a little bit closer. I really don't want to risk falling down into the void there, or into the fog. Nice. Got the triple hit to instantly kill him. That's not necessarily hard, but, you know, sometimes you fail it. That gets us another key. So far, this palace is going pretty well. I'm pretty happy with the way that it's been going. Pull out the boomerang, throw the boomerang as I fall to aggro all of these shadow beasts at once, then get turned into a wolf, go slightly off to the side, and get all three of the beasts. Then make our way over here. Here, Midna charge, targeting all three of them. No, didn't quite get them. There's a lot of cool strats to deal with all of these Zantheads very, very quickly, but I didn't really manage to make any of them work. Going to claw shot to this claw shot target, and then claw shot to another claw shot target from there. And then claw shot, you guessed it, to a third claw shot target. From which I will then claw shot to a fourth claw shot target. Who'd have thunk it? Then I'll pick up the key. Now I can do a cutesy little claw shot target here in order to avoid having to drop all the way back down. It's a little bit finicky, but there we go. Whee! And now we get to fight Phantom Zant again. Let's see if I can do it properly this time. Or more properly. I did get 2 proper cycles just there. But let's see if I can get all 3. This time there's no cutscene, so I have to actually roll at an angle instead of dead ahead. Oh no. Looks like he got his spell off. Okay, looks like he didn't actually. Cool. It's a little bit difficult to tell sometimes. Okay, we're not going to get 3 cycles, but if I just don't hit him too hard, we can still get him in a consistent 4 cycles, where he's not going to start teleporting like crazy the way that he did before. That's still fine. That's much faster than the first one, but it's still not quite perfect. Oh well. Okay. The next sequence of carrying this soul around is a lot harder than the first. We're going to have to go back through Stupid Room backwards, which really sucks. Did I get the soul in time? I did. Sweet. Very nice. The Shadow Beast sort of came up with me, but that luckily doesn't matter. It does matter. Alright, there we go. Yeesh. Okay. The way that he was just in my face there, that was awesome. I've actually never seen that before. He usually stays downstairs. It's never happened before. This room we like to call Run Straight Room. I think you can see why. This Shadow Beast pushing the soul just a little bit always gets in the way. It's very annoying. As far as I know, that Shadow Beast doesn't have a name, though. Now it's time for Stupid Room, but a second time. And it's much worse on the way back. We're just going to take it very easy. The main thing here is just to make sure you don't fall, because if you fall, odds are good that the hand is going to get its, well, hands on your soul, and we really want to avoid that at all costs. Here we go. This time I will try to hit the one-framer. Oh, I didn't get it. How sad. It would save a little bit of time to just throw the soul there, then walk over to the platform, and then as the platform is rising, claw shot the soul again. I don't risk going for it unless I hit the one-framer, because there is some risk involved. But if you do hit the one-framer, it's pretty free. Well, it's not pretty free, but like it's a good source of time save, is what I'm trying to say. Trying and failing. Anyway, getting the 2 souls to the sockets here in the central room will get us the light sword. And this is just an upgrade that only functions inside this dungeon, but it makes it so that the Master Sword can now cut through the dark fog, as well as instantly kills every enemy inside Palace of Twilight other than Zant. It's going to be very useful for both reasons. It also now activates semi-souls, which is obviously also nice. Okay. This next room is chock full of squeebles. Bats too, but mostly squeebles. Going to pick up... Oh, wait, no, these are what we call semi-souls. Sorry, my bad. The Master Sword can now activate those little light switches that you find around. These are semi-souls. Sorry, I said it way wrong. And you guys don't. Right. Like I said, chock full of squeebles. Anyway. You can now go up the stairs. This is what I was talking about. These little balls that you can activate. I didn't get the heart? Really? Shame. Okay. There's a bit of cool movement here, where if I do everything right... The platform is now already ready to be activated, and I've had a very efficient path through all of the Zant heads, so I can pick up this small key and then just immediately run to the platform without needing to hit the switches and wait for them to warm up. Very nice. Fun fact, I don't think I've ever actually hit that before. In a run, anyway. I've hit it in practice, but like, I don't think I've ever actually done that. So that's pretty cool. Oh, I didn't actually pick up the heart. Oh well. Okay, now it's time for the outside section. Mostly, you just have to wait a whole bunch, but there is a little bit of important movement on our way to the boss key. First things first, though, we're just going to go to this here platform. And we're going to have to just wait for it to get all the way across to the other side of the outside room. In the meantime, I'm going to repeatedly do spin attacks back and forth to make sure that I don't accidentally get knocked off the platform by a cargo rock. All we have to do is kill this Zant head, wait for it to explode, and then side hop into the void. There is also a platform ride back, but simply voiding out is much faster. I'm going to pick up this small key from defeating all of the Zant heads before going out of my way for the boss key. Strictly speaking, it's a little bit slower, but I like doing it this way because it just helps me keep my mind on track. This is one of those beginner things where there's really no reason to do it, but it just makes sense to me, and so I've stuck with it. I'm going to jump into the cargo rock roosting area, and then just simply claw shot my way up. The cargo rocks are going to try to get in the way, but for the most part, they really can't get in the way. They're just not particularly capable of hitting you when you're on claw shot targets, so it's not that big of a deal. I don't even know if they're capable of doing it at all. I have to assume they can, but I've never seen it, I don't think. We're just going to take a little bit of damage here in order to fall down without having to transform into a wolf from touching dark fog. And then we can move on into the next room. Right here, there's a Shadow Beast fight, but it really won't be much of a fight. They're dead. Now we just activate this platform, look for hearts. Looks like no hearts. Unfortunate. And then we just take a little trip across several of these. This is the part where I show off the fact that if you target without holding the sword while holding the claw shots, Link's claw shots will spontaneously disappear, but only the left one. Whee! I was so scared there. You could hear me gasp. Yeah, that room isn't particularly interesting, but if you do fall down, boy howdy do you lose time. Let's try not to do that. In this room, you just kind of have to fight repeated waves of shadow beasts, and they just sort of fall on top of you, and you can use the light sword to just decimate them. It's not particularly interesting or difficult. Given that I have 15 bombs, I really don't feel the need to make a safety save for Zant just yet. I'll do it if I fail to fight, though. But with 15 bombs, that's not likely to happen, so we should be okay. The reason I need bombs to fight Zant is because one of Zant's phases is based on Morpheal, and as you'll recall, we don't have the Sora armor, and we had to fight Morpheal using bombs. We are going to be doing the same thing for that phase of Zant, which is a much shorter fight than Morpheal, but still takes a couple of bombs to do. A minimum of 2, in fact, same as the Morpheal fight. Alright. In the first phase of Zant, I'm going to just throw the boomerang at where I know he's going to spawn, to get him to immediately come down. Shit. Not quite right, but it's fine. Then going to throw the boomerang at him again. And there we go, that's the phase over. The second phase is going to be much the same, where I'm going to use the boomerang to try and scare him off and speed it up a little bit. But I'm also going to use my body to do the same thing. How many times he actually just rocks the arena before he starts shooting is random here, and it's a little unfortunate. That's a very high amount of damage. Pretty okay RNG. 4 and a 3. I'm very happy with that. Now, the next phase is the trouble phase. First thing I'm going to do is just simply equip Claw and Boots. I'm going to land with the Boots and then do a single target roll to set up my position. Then I'm going to use the Claw Shot, aim it slightly up, and wait for the mask to open. When it does, I'm going to Claw Shot Zant. I will then hit him with right, left, up, down, which is the fastest you can do a 4-hit combo underwater, and then immediately get a refill. Then I'm going to swim to where I need to be next, and when we're there, we'll wait a little while before doing another refill to finish the fight. You don't really have to swim much of anywhere, but the reason I like to do it is because that way I have something to do in the meantime, and I can sort of keep track of myself for timing my bomb air refill. We just have to wait him out with his attack here, and then Claw Shot him again, and hit him with the same combo again. Right, left, up, down. And that's the fight. Well, that phase of it. Every Zant phase sort of constitutes its own little boss fight, of course. This is the Ook phase, where we're just going to knock him down, and then we're going to hit him with a full combo, and then we're going to knock him down again, using the ball and chain this time, and then we're going to jump attack, spin, and... Okay, well you're supposed to spin again, but just doing 2 slashes will work just fine. There we are. Now for the Blizzetta phase. This part of the game is the only reason we need the ball and chain. Everything else that you might possibly need it for, we could do something else. We could skip it somehow, but not this. This place just checks for the ball and chain straight up. No 2 ways about it. This is it. Take it or leave it. Zant's feet are vulnerable only to this item. And there we go. That's the phase. That leaves only the Castle Town phase, Zant proper, where I'm going to try to set it up such that I'll do exactly the right amount of damage on each cycle to get him to do his cycles quicker. It's a little bit tricky. Okay, got the first one. Now we're just going to spin attack repeatedly. There we go. And then line her up. Very nice. And once more. Dang it. Yep. That's unfortunate. It's fine though. There we go. If I'd lined up that combo earlier such that I would have actually just hit him with the last attack and only the last attack, we could have been okay here, but oh well. Or that is to say, we could have skipped that last cycle. Stay hydrated, everybody. Alright, this is the one heart piece that we will spawn in, but I won't grab, or heart container, rather. We didn't spawn in any heart pieces. That's not quite true. We entered fair and field. There's a heart piece, heart piece just sitting in a chest there. Or, not in a chest, in a tree. I can talk! Seriously, wow. That's what you get when you've been speedrunning for 3.5 hours already. Fries the brain real good. Gonna transform Wolf here just because it's faster, like I was saying before. Wolf Link just runs faster than Human Link, so may as well. That's not quite true everywhere. There's a couple exceptions to that. Castle Town being the most notable, but, you know. I am now going to immediately warp to Castle Town, since Hyrule Castle is the only thing left to do on our bucket list. I do have to zoom in warp, like I was saying, because that is still the only way for us to actually warp. And right here, there is another postman trigger. There is a way to skip this. There was a way to skip the one way at the start of the run, too, but I'm not very good at it, and so I don't bother, because it doesn't really cost that much time. It's just one of those things that's not a super high priority when you're new. In addition, I do want to transform Human here anyway, and in order to skip the postman, I would have to transform Human as well. So there's just not that much pressure on me to actually skip this cutscene. It's mostly fine. It'd be slightly faster not to talk to him, though. In Castletown, you move a little faster as Human than as Wolf, because as Wolf you have to do that whole awkward dash cancel business like I was talking about before, and just simply rolling around as Human is a little bit faster than that. My run is valid. There's a community in-joke that if you don't enter this cutscene trigger by bonking on that wall instead of doing anything else, then your run didn't count. So, happy to say that my run does count. This cutscene's very long, so I'm going to just quickly refill my water bottle. Having a sink right next to your desk is incredibly convenient. Alright. Looks like we'll be going a little bit over estimate, which makes sense. The start of this run was really scuffed. It should be just about another 20 minutes from here. A little bit less. The way that she slides down the barrier will never get old. Here we are. Alright. Time for Hyrule Castle. The first thing we need to do is get a small key to enter this area. The only way to do that, or to enter the main castle, the only way to do that is to defeat King Bulblin, so we're going to have to make our way over there. We have to get through this arena in order to get there, but luckily there's an easy way to do that. These are red Bokoblins, which are incredibly tough and would take a long time to kill, even with the Master Sword, but a single bomb kills them instantly. So we can just sort of move on. Ow. Here, there's another one of these arenas where we're supposed to fight a bunch of Bokoblins, but I'm just simply not going to do that. As long as you just skip the cutscene immediately, you can literally just walk out of the arena there before the barrier forms, and never have to fight these guys. It's incredibly easy, and hilarious. That gets us to King Bulblin 4. You'll note that the only King Bulblin fights we actually fought are the third and fourth ones, not the first and second. Oops. While we could immediately attack King Bulblin 3 upon his spawning, King Bulblin 4 has no such luck, and we do in fact have to wait for him to do an attack before we can actually attack him. There we go. It's possible to beat King Bulblin 4 in just one cycle, but it is extraordinarily difficult. That gets us the key. Having done that, we're now just going to save quit to get back to the start of the dungeon, as we often do, since it's faster than walking back there. Next, we're going to skip another little arena here with enemies, this time by jump attacking in a particular place, which prevents Link from being forced to walk into the arena, which this one does do, while the previous one didn't, hilariously. And then we can simply walk out of it the way that we did before. Next, we have to fight a Dark Nut, which I'm going to try to make use of the ball and chain in. Dang it. Yep. There. That's what it's supposed to look like. I shouldn't have pulled sword there. I don't know why I did. In this room, you're supposed to do a different lantern combo on these torches from what I'm going to do, but it's slightly faster to do this one. I think that's my first time doing that first try, actually. Since this is not the intended combo, the lanterns don't stay lit for as long as they should, and so it's a little bit tight to actually do the fast combo. I don't think I've ever done that first try before. Bombs. Bombs and rain. Nice. One single bomb takes care of both Denalphos without too much trouble. Which only really leaves one more thing to do before we enter the final tower of Hyrule Castle, which is an Eralphos fight. This time, there's only one of them, but we also can't skip it, so we kind of do just have to fight this guy. Hit him with one combo now, then allow him to attack, and punish him for it with another combo, which will kill him. There is a faster way to do this, where you would again use the ball and chain, but it's a little bit more finicky than it was with the Dark Nut, and so I don't usually do it. It's a little unsafe. That gets us a small key, which we need to get into the tower itself, and then we are also going to walk on over to get the boss key from this other, like, what do you call that, a parapet? In order to actually get to the boss room in the end. We don't actually have to do anything here, but we just have to wait. I like to call this the magical exploding hawk cutscene, after a joke Bewilderbeast made one time. Magical exploding hawk. I love this cutscene so much. Russell has a trained hawk and a sword. Ashe has a bow. Auru has a damn bazooka. And Shad is there. For some reason. Anyway, that gets us the boss key. So now we can move on. Just one final ascent up the tower of Hyrule Castle. Just one final bonk on Hyrule Castle. And then we can go and fight the various final bosses. If you've played the game before, you'll remember that Twilight Princess has a 4-phase final boss. It's quite lengthy. None of the individual phases are actually all that long, so it's mostly not that bad, but like, it will take quite a while to complete. These ghost rats can get in your way here, which is very unfortunate. Oh dear, okay, cool. You're supposed to use a particular route on those blocks to only step on the ones that are safe. But if you just simply do landing rolls, none of the other ones can actually fall fast enough for you to die there. So you can kind of just roll across all of them. Claw spinner. This time I'm going to try to fight the Lizalfos the way that you're actually supposed to. There we go. And now, hilariously, you can kind of just skip this encounter with 2 Dark Nuts just by grabbing this brazier. You just skip the cutscene, and you're behind the barrier, and you can just leave. That's probably one of my favorite little things about TP. You can just sort of do that. It's zero effort. Alright. Now, I'm just going to quickly equip Ball and Chain Iron Boots, which are the last few items we'll need. And now it's time for RNG! So the Zelda boss fight here is just an RNG check. She can do whichever attack she prefers within a couple small restrictions. And so how many cycles it takes for her to give you enough Powerball attacks to actually kill her is totally random. The most usual numbers are 7 and 8, with 7 also being the minimum possible number of cycles. But it can be more. I think the record right now is 15? I'm genuinely not sure. I'd have to check the spreadsheet. Okay, well, we're not doing great. We're on track for a 9 at minimum, since she didn't start with a Powerball. Alright. We're still on track for a 9. In the meantime, I'm going to walk over here and collect this fairy. Going to look the other way to avoid lagging on the Triforce attack. Let's see what she's thinking. So this is 4. 5. Hello, Midna. How goes it? So this is cycle 6 now. Again, there's fully just nothing I can do here. This just happens the way that Zelda wants it to happen. Cycle 6. So yeah, we could get a 9. I think. No, wait. Well, that does less damage than the Triforce attack, so I'll take it. No, I think we're minimum 10 now. Anyway, that was 7. Let's just keep count. How about that? 8. The Triforce attack is also significantly slower than the lunge, so we'd much rather see her do lunges, but oh well. 8. I think there should be one more attack here before she can even do a Powerball again. Nope. Alright. Either I miscounted, or it's a 9. Alright. The other boss fights here don't have nearly as much RNG, so this should be okay. Next up, Beast Ganon. We don't have the bow, so I'm instead going to use the ball and chain to stun him. Which is a little clunkier, but it also works. Dealt the appropriate amount of damage. Now I need to transform Wolf, because from here on out the boss will only get stunned by Wolf. He will dodge the ball and chain or bow attacks. And I have to keep watch for the portals now. Where will he be? This boss fight is kind of just a glorified cutscene in a lot of ways. It's a little unfortunate. What the... Okay, did I target him too early? What in the world? Are you just gonna keep running around, my guy? What's happening here? Okay. I think I targeted him too early. I was sure that I'd waited long enough, but so be it. It's fine. No real trouble. 2, 4, and that's that. Next up is Horseback Ganon, which, contrary to popular myth, is actually not RNG, how good Zelda aims. Her aim is entirely dependent on your own. You have to point your stick at Ganondorf, and that is where she will shoot. So, if I mess up here, it's all me. There is a little bit of RNG in the way that Ganondorf moves, and it can be a little more difficult or less difficult depending on that, but on the whole, it's up to me whether this goes well or not. We stunned him too. If I just let go of the spin attack there, we should be alright. But alas. Let's try again. Oh, he's going for a joust. Okay, cool. In case you can't tell, I'm not super good at this part of the fight. There we go. Once you've hit him once, it gets a lot easier because he gets a lot more predictable, and you can kind of just stun lock him, assuming you hit your shots. But I can definitely struggle to get that initial hit. Also, sometimes he crosses your path like that, and then the horse forcibly knocks you off, even if Ganondorf isn't actually attacking, which is kind of a pain. Zelda, please. Thank you. There we go. That gave me a lot more trouble than it should, but we got it. Okay. One more fight. And this is by far the easiest of the four, or the fastest of the four. Obviously, I didn't really need to think about Zelda. Interestingly, if you just simply never press continue on this next text box, the cutscene will continue exactly as normal, and you will lose no time, but the text box will remain, which is incredibly amusing. By doing this, you can fight Ganondorf with the text box still on screen. Du kämpfst sehr gut. Aber genug erwartet. I messed up. You just have to wait for him to kick and then hit him with a jump attack into immediate spin. That's all it is. Now I equip the boots, and that's time. Yeesh. A tiny bit overestimate. Second half here was much better than the first. I spent like maybe 10 minutes retrying some of the early game tricks, like rupee roll, pillar clip, early master sword, sword and shield skip, that stuff. So, I'm honestly pretty happy with this. This is just like the worst end of what I was expecting to do. So, only being about 2 minutes over estimate, I think, means that I picked a good estimate. So, yeah. That should be all for me. I expect I will be told to screw off any minute now. But yeah, happy to help out. I hope that the nap was good, Cruel. And I'm gonna go have lunch, I think. That's what I'm gonna do. Good, happy to hear it. Alright. Good luck with organizing the rest of this. And yeah. That will be all for me.